They have condemned last night's violence. They say peaceful protest is the only way forward. A 30-year-old man's been charged with the attempted murder of Stephen Ogilvie, who lost an eye in the attack. The Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, says there's no justification for attacks and abuse.
It's really important that communities come together in the face of when terrible crimes take place, for a community to come together in its response to those crimes.
Claire Hanna, SDLP leader and MP for Belfast South, told Andrew Marr people are now feeling nervous to be out and about.
I understand from it's a ghost town today. The buses aren't running today. Schools have been closed. Health appointments have been cancelled because of people's anxiety for being out on the street. And then those who do look or sound different, I'm sure are very anxious just to be in their own homes tonight in areas that may be affected by this violence again.
Scotland's First Minister has condemned linked disorder in Glasgow, Edinburgh and Ayr last night. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage claims many of those who are demonstrating have valid concerns over migration. The man accused of Monday's attack is a Sudanese refugee who entered Northern Ireland across the Irish border, having flown from Paris. Barrister Jonathan Hall KC, who reviews the government's terrorism legislation, has told LBC he's worried about state threats from migrants.
I do know that there are Iranian operatives seeking to recruit people, and people coming, for example, on small boats because of family ties or because they are financially precarious, can be pressurised or agree, because they're ideologically aligned, to act for the Iranian or some other hostile state.
A 14-year-old girl arrested after 3 people were stabbed at a school in Manchester has been detained under the Mental Health Act. 2 teenagers and a staff member were injured in Blakely yesterday morning. 2 men have been jailed for steering overcrowded small boats full of migrants to the UK. They're the first to be sentenced for endangering others during a channel crossing. Donald Trump says the US will resume strikes on Iran today after a helicopter was brought down.
We're going to be attacking them very hard.
You're resuming bombing?
Yeah, well, we are. Based on the helicopter, I guess we have the right to do that.
Earlier, the president said the Iranians would have to pay the price for taking too long to negotiate a peace deal. Dr. Sanam Vakil, the director of the Middle East and North Africa programme at Chatham House, told LBC's Andrew Marr the president is a long way from getting the deal he wanted.
We've seen an uptick in military strikes in the context of Lebanon and over the past 24 hours in the Persian Gulf as well. Let's see if he makes good with his threats in order to try and use military pressure to change the dynamics on the diplomatic track.
England cricket captain Ben Stokes has been dropped from the next test over an incident at a nightclub. He was there with bowler Gus Atkinson, who's also been left out. Authorities are investigating a breach of team protocols. And people who suffer with migraine could get new relief. A specialised tablet to treat the condition if other drugs don't work has been recommended by NICE, who approve medications in England. Rob Music is from the Migraine Trust.
And over the last few years, there's been the development of migraine-specific treatments called CGRPs, and that's been really important. And for the people that have been able to access them, quite transformative in terms of getting their quality of life back. There are a couple of these CGRP drugs, and they can be used preventives and in terms of for acute. And today it was announced by NICE that one of the treatments has been made available as an acute treatment, and that's really positive.
We're told migraines cost the UK economy £8.8 billion a year due to lost productivity. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 27 points at 10,254. The pound buys at $1.34 and €1.16. LBC weather, some sunny spells to end on, turning dry for a time overnight, but low cloud and rain will arrive in the west through the early hours. Lows of 7 to 12 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 4 minutes past 7 on LBC. I'm Iain Dale, here with you until 10. 45 years ago this summer, there were a series of violent riots that took place in many parts of England. I think the first one was in Brixton, but they followed in Toxteth, in Handsworth, in Birmingham, I think St Paul's in Bristol as well, and several other places too. I fear that we might be about to repeat this, but possibly on a bigger scale. And I don't say that to scaremonger. I look at the situation that we've seen with the protests that happened in Southampton, was it last week or the week before, and now what's happened in Belfast last night and the night before, and also what happened in Glasgow and a couple of other places in Scotland as well, including Ayr. I mean, you don't think of Ayr as somewhere that you're likely to have a violent protest. And the common theme among these is that they've been in response to a crime allegedly committed by somebody from either a different race or ethnic minority group or an asylum seeker. Now, there are agitators at foot here who are fomenting discontent. There are understandable reasons for people to protest, but protest does not have to turn violent. But there are people who are determined to make these protests turn violent, and I think they're determined to do that in all sorts of areas of the country over the summer, and they must be stopped. So my main question to you this hour is, how do we stop them? How does our system of governance stop it? How does the police stop it? I haven't got the answer to these questions, but I'm interested to hear if you have any suggestions. Because the family of the victim of the Belfast knife attack have called for calm after the riots erupted across the city. We had Henry Novak's family calling for exactly the same. But we've all seen with our own eyes what has happened. And it's no good for politicians just to call for calm, as politicians rightly have done today. That doesn't have any effect on the mindless thugs that perpetrate this violence. And let's not beat around the bush. Many of them are from far-right organisations, and they take succour from the tacit encouragement that they are given by the likes of Elon Musk when he tweets, or whatever the equivalent of tweets is, that he encourages protests and they should be loud in capital letters. Well, you can interpret that in a number of ways, can't you? So I think everyone has a responsibility to be responsible, including political leaders from all parts of the political spectrum. Well, this afternoon, the Northern Irish First Minister, Michelle O'Neill, spoke to reporters outside Belfast City Hall. She condemned the rioting which took place last night and also made clear some of the types of people who she thinks are to blame for inciting it.
What we saw spill onto our streets since Monday night has been nothing short of thuggery. What we saw has been nothing short of racism. We saw youths taken to the streets, young men masked, attacking families, burning them out of their homes, attacking public property, attacking businesses. All we've seen is criminality on our streets and a real attempt to underline racism in our society, which I do not believe is widespread. I think that none of us should have any common cause with those that cause this kind of destruction and mayhem on our streets. And certainly from the communities that we're engaging with, people are horrified, people are living in fear. And I think the message that we send very strongly is, one, a message of calm. We do not want to see this type of behaviour on our streets. Two, we need to say very clearly that we say no to racism, sectarianism and any kind of hatred out there. And there are those people out there that are using what happened on Monday night to inflame division, to create hatred. And those people don't care two hoots about the people here. They do not care for 1 second. They probably don't even know where we are on a map. But these bad actors are actually using what's happened on Monday night and playing to people's fears and orchestrating this whilst they sit cosy in their homes and encourage all these other people to go out onto the streets.
Meanwhile, here in London, the Prime Minister was asked about the rioting last night and what should be done about high-profile people and tech platforms who are fueling the anger we saw last night.
We will crack down on anyone who's fueling this division. But it is really important, and I agree with him, we're heading into a very difficult situation in Northern Ireland. As I say, I've spoken to the Chief Constable, the First Minister and Deputy First Minister this morning. They are united in saying we should all be calling for calm. The police are on the front line, and it's our duty as politicians to call for that calm, and nobody who's a politician should be whipping up division and hatred.
Well, let's cross live to Belfast and speak to Lewis Goodall, presenter of Sundays with Lewis Goodall on LBC and, of course, co-presenter of the Newsagents podcast. Lewis, very good evening. You're in Belfast. What have you learned since you've been there?
Well, Ian, I think two things. One is this is a city which has known elements of this before, albeit this is coming to it in a new guise. This is a city right now, I think, which is being terrorised. It's being terrorised partly from social media accounts, powerful social media accounts, thousands of miles away in some cases. But it's also being terrorised by the threat of violence. Right now, in Belfast city centre, as you know, these days, generally speaking, a thriving, very successful city in the UK, it is an absolute ghost town. There is not a soul anywhere. Virtually every shop, every school, every public building, the transport system, all shut down at some point this afternoon. You can go through them, and I'm not talking about little corner shops or independent businesses here. I'm talking about the big high street shops. In nearly every shop window, only a few hundred metres from where I'm sat right now, in every single shop window there is a makeshift sign saying, due to unforeseen circumstances, we'll be closing earlier today. And this is partly arisen because you're seeing this weird fusion of something old, which is the threat of a paramilitary style violence, with something new, which is the power of tech. Not sooner as I arrived here talking to taxi drivers and people, it became very, very clear that the talk in the city, and it's not a huge city, so it's easy to sort of spread messages like this in a relatively small population. The talk was of these AI-generated images, which seemed to, or purported to be, official communication, saying that no deviation would be tolerated, that every single business and local person had to accept it, talking about road closures, purporting to be from authorities. In fact, these are being generated by AI interfaces, by far-right groups, basically trying to suggest that violence is coming to specific cities, and to specific streets and specific places. There are, doing the rounds across this city tonight, GIFs, JPEGs, pictures of and the list of addresses with street names on it, suggesting that tonight these groups, hundreds of people, as we saw last night, young men generally speaking, in balaclavas, masked, often with Molotov cocktails and other crude arms, will be turning up at these streets in these times. This is a city which really does feel not only under lockdown, but also under the threat of violence, which is coming from every direction and which more often than not is not going to materialize, but is being threatened via very modern means, i.e. AI-generated images, which is terrorizing people.
Do you have any intelligence on who the people in the balaclavas were? I mean, there was speculation that some of them have come over from England, that they are, to quote a phrase, the usual suspects of far-right agitators.
It's not entirely clear. I mean, I've heard those rumours as well today, Ian, and I don't think there's necessarily any sort of proof of that so far, although I wouldn't be surprised. And obviously we saw what Tommy Robinson had to say and had to do in terms of trying to encourage people to come. I think what is pretty clear, though, is that, as ever with Belfast and with Northern Ireland, sort of old types of violence which have been known in the city are fusing with this new phenomenon. So I think, generally speaking, it is known, and it has been much speculated about, that some of the violence that we saw, easy to forget now, this happened in the post-Brexit period, you might remember, sort of disaffected, loyalist groups, often young men without much to do, people who could easily be preyed upon by older, more sophisticated political forces, came out and rioted in the sort of 2021, 2022 period as the kind of new Brexit settlement kind of started to materialise. And it became clear that, or it was felt for certain loyalist groups and unionist groups, that they were losing power, that they were losing grip. I think you're seeing some of that fuse with some of the far-right activity that we've seen across much of the rest of the UK, in the wake of, as you were saying in your introduction there, in the wake of violent incidents, sometimes perpetrated by refugees or asylum seekers or recent migrants. So what you're basically seeing, I think, on the streets of Belfast, you saw last night, hopefully not tonight, but who knows, is basically a very familiar tale that we've started to see and experience across the rest of the UK, fused with the old Northern Irish story, where, residents of this city, it almost feels, someone was saying it to me earlier, it almost feels like sort of wearing an old coat again for the first time that you haven't worn or seen for so long That sort of shadow and familiar reflexes where everyone's like, you know what, we better get out of town. We've played this record before.
Lewis, thank you for joining us. Keep safe. That's Lewis Goodall, LBC presenter and co-presenter of the Newsagents podcast. Well, Owen Tennyson is Deputy Leader of the Alliance Party and a member of the Northern Ireland Assembly for Upper Bann. Owen, very good evening. The last time we met was about 3 years ago. You were a very young politician. You're still a young politician, but you never thought you'd see these scenes again in Belfast, did you?
Well, unfortunately, we've become used to these scenes in Belfast and across Northern Ireland over the past 3 years. Iain, this is now the third summer in a row where we have had what is, and there's no other way to put it, a race-based pogrom on our streets. We had masked men roaming the streets across Northern Ireland, targeting people on the basis of their skin colour, saying they wanted to, quote, get the foreigners out, kicking in doors, breaking windows, and burning down homes. Now, I understand that there is anger and frustration out there in our community. I feel that anger over what happened on Monday night. The video that I watched was one of the most barbaric and gruesome acts of violence I have ever seen. But it didn't take long for far-right agitators online to swoop in and seek to exploit that fear and to whip up hate and division and to incite people, often young people, out onto our streets. And I would appeal particularly to those young people who are involved. Tommy Robinson and Elon Musk don't care about you. They don't care about your community. They don't care about what happened in North Belfast. They will move on to their next target when you're left picking up the pieces. And so I would appeal to anyone who has been involved in this racist thuggery and violence to cease and desist. This is not a debate. It's not a conversation. It's not legitimate. It's wrong and it needs to stop.
From what you understand, the people that are perpetrating this, both physically present at these violent protests and those encouraging it from maybe a distance, are they predominantly based in Northern Ireland, or are there, I mean, you mentioned Elon Musk there and Tommy Robinson, but do you think that some of the people have been actually almost shipped in from the UK mainland to do this?
Well, it's too early to say definitively at this stage, Iain. I mean, I can speak from my own experience in my own constituency, where we have had rioting over the past 24 hours. And most of the people involved have been young people aged 12 to 16 from local towns. There are undoubtedly far-right actors stirring this up in the background, and there are obviously adults inciting and encouraging this violence too. And I find that utterly, utterly deplorable. It does nothing to serve justice for the victim. What you're doing by engaging in that riotous behaviour is pure, unabated racism. It is holding entire communities responsible for the actions of one individual. And unfortunately, this kind of violent attack is not new in Northern Ireland. We've had many brutal attacks in our history. We have a shocking rate of femicide. Just last week, there was a sentencing for a man who murdered Natalie McNally, a constituent of mine. It was a very high-profile case. And the judge said that the attack was so frenzied that the coroner couldn't even determine the cause of death. Now, where were the brave patriots then? There were no riots then. There were no protests then. So this isn't about community safety. It is about racism. And all of us in Northern Ireland need to stand united against those who are seeking to exploit the fear and anger that people rightly feel in communities to whip up hate and division and to create more victims and terrorise more innocent people.
Owen, good to talk to you, albeit in terrible circumstances. Thank you very much indeed. That's Owen Tennyson, the Deputy Leader of the Alliance Party. Well, Owen called it for what it was last night, a racist riot. And you don't have to be somebody on the left to call people out on that, do you? Because it's quite clear that people from ethnic minorities were being hauled out of their homes, terrorised out of their homes, and for one reason only, the colour of their skin. So I am waiting for all politicians to condemn that, to call it out. We didn't hear Nigel Farage condemning the violence in Southampton until 24 hours later. We heard nothing from Rupert Lowe on that. I'm still waiting to hear from either of those gentlemen on this. I don't hold them responsible for this, but I'd quite like to hear them condemn it, wouldn't you? 7:20.
This is LBC.
Get unlimited video calls with vets from First Vet.
Deportations, and that's what this comes down to. It comes down to politicians' failure year after year, term after term, to do anything about immigration. To say we're going to do something about it. I mean, we consistently voted Conservative. We voted for Brexit, and the politicians just seem to turn around, throw it all back in our faces, and say, "Here you go, have record levels of immigration instead." And I think the very base of this whole thing, that is where that is this problem. Just a massive disconnect between the political class and the people of this country, who have never given any consent to this, and there's certainly no mandate for the scale of immigration we're seeing into this country.
Well, you are right to the extent that immigration has been incredibly high up until the last 12 months, when it fell to around 200,000. Now, I don't know whether you're arguing there should be no immigration to this country, and I completely agree with you that if people who come here illegally, they should be deported. Absolutely right. But you can't go as far as certainly Restore have gone, and indeed Reform have gone, I think, too far on this too, to deport people who are here perfectly legally.
You mean end indefinite leave to remain?
Well, you can do that for future people, but you can't do that for people who've already got it. I mean, that would be outrageous, surely.
Well, you can, yeah, of course you can. I mean, we can do it.
So people who are here perfectly legally, you think should be deported when they're earning money, they are contributing to the economy. You think it would be okay to deport them?
No, what I think the suggestion is that we put them onto visas and say, you have to apply for a visa, and if you don't meet the threshold, then I'm sorry, but the problem is our country has been governed so recklessly. The negligence is shocking, and in our system, no government can bind the hands of a future government. Luckily, and we have to have the right to put right things that were wrong.
Well, of course, any government will want to do that. But all I'm saying that from a basic humanity point of view, from a fairness point of view, you can't suddenly tell people who've got a perfect legal right to be here that we're changing the rules now. So you'll have to go. I mean that you cannot do that.
You can, Ian.
Well, you can do that, but is that really the kind of country you want to live in?
Yes, I want to live in a country.
Dear, oh dear.
I want to live in. I want to live in a country. Are you suggesting that we just carry on with this mad destabilization of the United Kingdom?
I am saying that immigration to this country, the legal side of immigration, has to be restricted to what the economy needs. And that's all. I don't believe that people should be allowed to come here if the country doesn't need them. But nor do I believe that we should be offering asylum to every Tom, Dick or Harry who comes over the channel. Anybody that does that, I'm happy to change the system so they can be more easily deported. But it's not as easy as you're making out.
It is, Ian. You're making it sound difficult. It's absolutely like you change the system and you say, I'm sorry, the political class in this country has let down the British people so badly that when you were given that, They made huge mistakes. It's put far too much pressure on housing, far too much pressure on services, massive pressure on community tension.
But you can't take it out on perfectly legal, law-abiding people who are here perfectly legally. That is not, I think, the kind of country that Britain is. Mike, thank you very much. Now, Jim Shannon is Democratic Unionist MP for Strangford and joins me now from the House of Commons. Jim, very good evening to you. Now, has there been any unrest in your part of Northern Ireland?
No, Ian. First of all, I salute my constituents who had two protests, one in Newtownards, one in Portavogie. Probably about 400, I think, maybe thereabouts, maybe a few more in Newtownards. It was perfectly peaceful. No stones thrown. The police said there was no thuggery. We had women on Zimmers. We had mothers with their children. We had family members. It was very disciplined. But the thing is, Ian, the protests are important for people to have an avenue to protest as long as it's peaceful. And my constituency, it was peaceful. I think the thing for government to look at when we see peaceful protests where there's no nastiness, there's no aggro, there's nobody getting hurt, nobody getting abused. Whenever people come out in the streets to register their concerns, I think government has to ask themselves, well, why are the people there? So I totally condemn the random vandalism and abuse and violence and destruction that there was in Belfast. The people who did that deserve to be accountable under the law of the land, and they will be. But they must look for us in Newtownards and Strangford, my constituency, and must look at the reasons for it.
But many of these people who were out on the streets of Belfast last night, they were clearly, some of them would have been possibly what we could both describe as the usual suspects, agitators who just want a ruck. Others will have been motivated by racist motivations, I suspect. And then there will have been perfectly law-abiding people who would have been as horrified as you or I over what transpired. But what can be done to ensure that sort of thing doesn't happen again? Because I think it could start to happen across the whole of the UK if we're not careful.
And I think if I look at my own constituency, where obviously I have a better knowledge of, and I can explain probably or encapsulate their point of views. And for us in Strangford and Newtownards, there is issues over those who get by the laws, come into the Northern Ireland via the Republic of Ireland, for instance, where there seems to be a porous border where immigration doesn't count and people can come across without any border force. We have also asked for the police service to be funded accordingly, because there is no border force in Northern Ireland, but the PSNI are tasked with that responsibility without having any extra funds or officers to actually carry out the duties that would be involved. But the issue of illegal immigration or migration, as it is a key issue for many people. At the same time, and your previous person was speaking there, I can tell you right now, in my constituency of Strangford, we have, I think, 79 families from India, and every one of them, the man and woman, keep the accident and emergency going at the Ulster Hospital, the Belfast City Hospital, the Bangor Hospital, at the Masher Hospital. That's their job. If we didn't have them, we wouldn't have an accident and emergency service. My son went to school with Abdul Rab. He's been in Northern Ireland for 43 years. His son and my son went to school together. They create jobs, they create employment, they create wage packets. They're very much part of the society, and you're absolutely right. Those people deserve to stay here because they make a significant contribution to the economic life of Northern Ireland. Those are the people we want to retain. Those who come in illegally, government has to take action.
Jim, we've had a text from Russ who says, always a pleasure to hear from Mr. Shannon. I agree with him.
Oh, well, that's all. I believe I reflect the opinion of my constituents in Strangford, who are also, I believe, those very understanding people.
Well, it's great to have you on the programme, and thank you for offering such sensible views. And I just wish those views were replicated because Jim would self-describe as being on the right of politics. Why is it that there are some people on the right of politics who cannot bring themselves to condemn what they must see that, like the rest of us, see? Despicable violence which no sane member of society, no upstanding member of society should even give a moment's support to. But if you don't condemn these scenes, you are effectively, tacitly walking by on the other side of the road, aren't you? And if you're doing that, you should be very ashamed of yourself. It's 7:31 on LBC. Let's get the latest news headlines from Matt Hewitt.
The family of the man stabbed in Belfast on Monday night say violence isn't welcome following a night of unrest that's resulted in 2 people being charged with rioting. A 30-year-old Sudanese refugee has been remanded in custody, charged with the attempted murder of Stephen Ogilvie, who's lost an eye. Donald Trump has said the US will hit Iran very hard today, suggesting reporters keep the TV on so they don't miss it. The president said the strikes were justified by an Iranian attack on an Apache helicopter earlier this week. And Ben Stokes won't play in the second cricket test against New Zealand. The England captain and teammate Gus Atkinson have been dropped after breaching ECB protocols. LBC weather turning dry for a time overnight, but low cloud and rain will arrive in the west through the early hours. Lows of 7 to 12 degrees.
This is LBC.
At Waitrose, you know you're a food lover when the standout summer
but it was a fact. Now, I don't know where you'd suddenly replace all of those nurses from if you agree with Mike in Manchester and that everybody should be deported. I mean, it's crass, it's insulting, and it's crass. And in some ways, I think I shouldn't have read that out, because if you are somebody from another country who works in the NHS, you have every right to feel very insulted by that text from Steve. And I'm sorry about that. Gaz is in Lincoln. Hello, Gaz.
Yeah, hi there. Ian, your last caller, I totally get and I totally agree with. He's totally correct. Obviously, you can see it firsthand over there. My family member got a message today on the media saying to basically support Tommy Robinson in his group and to be white and proud. I just think now the media needs, I'm saying to your advisor, the media now needs to be shut down in the sense of Keir needs to get hold of some of what's going off now, because it's causing the messages now is just getting out of hand. I'm concerned for people of different ethnic persuasion. I've never known this country to be like this. I've never known why the Irish are amazing people. I have Irish friends, Celtic friends. I think you're part Scottish as well. But I've never understood why the Irish take it so personal against ethnic minorities, such as, what's happened is a one-off, but, why now? Why are they doing this against this Sudanese black person?
Because if somebody from an ethnic minority who's come to this country and given indefinite leave to remain, or whatever it was that he was given, the racists will find that as a reason to use that one single incident to have a go at a whole community. So every person in Belfast who comes from Africa now is living in fear, and I think that's outrageous. It's exactly the same as, say a white man rapes a white woman. Do we then accuse every white man of being a potential rapist?
Well, it's like living in Syria. Even for a homosexual man living in Syria, if you were seen to be a gay or anything, you would have been hanged from the buildings, apparently. It's just gone too far now in the Western world, in the sense of we seem to be the most. And this has gone on, don't forget, for absolutely years where it's been undercover. And, I just feel sorry for these people, because, if it wasn't for these people that come into our country, why have we got when I say our own people, our own persuasion, Caucasian, not in work? Why are they all on benefits, most of them? If it wasn't for, I'm not jumping over to that. I'm not saying everybody that on benefits is milking the system. I'm saying the ones genuine, deserve to be on benefits. But if it wasn't for the Filipinos in the hospitals, if it wasn't for the Indian, all different types of people, that's the second generation, we wouldn't be in. If I did my hand in tomorrow and I need to go to hospital, I'll be dealt with normally by a Filipino nurse or something near me. But it just seems to be they're treated like absolute scum, and they do so much hard work.
I think you're absolutely right. Gaz, thank you very much. Let's go to Chris, who's in Croydon. Chris, hi.
Oh, yes. Good evening, Ian. Look, I'd like to take the heat out of this, and I deplore the activities of the far right because they muddy the waters about the most essential question of all is exactly how many people can the UK accommodate in Europe. And the point is this, the Geneva Convention on Refugees and Asylum Seekers was drawn up with about 7 million Jews in mind. But now it was never intended to extend to sub-Saharan Africa or the Middle East, and they're inherently unstable parts of the world, largely in part because of their excessive birth rates. Now, I consider this is an ecological question, and it's just how many people can the UK accommodate, and it's not.
Well, fine. Have the debate about that.
Yes, exactly.
But you don't have the debate by doing this sort of thing.
Oh no, of course, exactly, because they people like that, they prevent the debate which we should be having, is because it's about exactly how many people can this country accommodate, and it's not the 70 or 80 million which we're currently heading towards.
Well, I mean that opens up a whole new debate, which I'm not going to. I mean, I do disagree with you. I think to say that the country is full up, I mean, you have to define your terms there, because 7% of our landmass in this country is built on, so you can't say it's full up from that point of view. I've always argued that for legal immigration, you have to control it by what the economy needs. And there will always be labour shortages. So yes, you bring in people from outside, not necessarily for 10 years, but there are ways of regulating these things. What is more difficult to control are the levels of illegal immigration, and that successive governments have failed to do. You're absolutely right on that. Let's go to Nick in Ilford. Hello, Nick.
Hi, Ian. So you asked the question, what can the government or politicians do to stop this problem? It's simple. Start listening to the people. They've been ignored for 20 years. Stop the immigration, reduce the numbers. We've had this blow up in Northern Ireland right now. This has been going on for the last 2 to 3 years. And although we can say this violence that's going on now is abhorrent, it's got it into the media, because the last 2 or 3 years it hasn't touched the media, even though there's been massive social problems and some fighting on the streets, but not to this scale. And I think something you said earlier is right. If this doesn't get dealt with, you're going to see this on English streets, Scottish streets, Welsh streets.
Well, we already are.
I mean, to that level. And a lot of it has to do with the media winding people up as well. I mean, if we go back to the Black Lives Matter protests, I mean, I vividly remember seeing news presenters talking about mainly peaceful protests with buildings burning in the background. Why isn't this being represented the same? Oh, it was a mainly peaceful protest, but these idiots did this.
Well, I mean, we can all come out with anecdotes about how we think things should be reported. I think some of those protests were absolutely not peaceful. You're right on that. Nick, thank you very much indeed. Now, we'll come back to your calls on this in just a moment. But Donald Trump has made clear today that American armed forces will be attacking the Iranian military again in the coming hours after the ceasefire between the two sides appeared to break down and peace talks stalled yesterday. Well, the president spoke to reporters gathered inside the Oval Office a couple of hours ago, and he talked up the chances of a long-term peace deal being agreed with Tehran and made clear that the US military will be launching more strikes against the Iranian military.
We'll see what happens, but we hit them hard yesterday, and we're going to hit them again hard today, in case you miss it, in case you don't turn on your television set. And we'll see what happens with the deal. We were really close to a deal, but they keep tapping us along. They keep playing us for suckers because, you know what? They dealt with some very stupid presidents. I have to say that. I'm embarrassed to say it.
Well, we're joined by David Patrikarakos, now special correspondent for the Daily Mail, the author of the book Nuclear Iran, The Birth of an Atomic State. David, good evening. What do you make of what Donald Trump has said there? Because on the one hand, he keeps saying that a peace deal is close, and then he's talking about striking Iran again. I mean, on the face of it, two very sort of contradictory things.
Absolutely, Ian. Look, when you look at Donald Trump, and this is something I've said several times already, it's very interesting. I've studied Iranian diplomacy for 2 decades, that's how old I am now. And as I say, look, rhetorically, the Iranians work in 3 registers. One is boasting about how wonderful they are, how ancient their civilization is. The second is complaining about how badly the world has treated them. And the third is threatening hellfire. You now have an American president that works in exactly the same rhetorical registers. You also have an American president who basically acts like a Middle Eastern leader. He sends his son-in-law to do business, all this sort of thing. This kind of thing, this threatening and asking for a deal, it's a very Iranian way of negotiating. So the whole thing becomes very hard to analyse and it becomes very confused. But amid it all, we are inching towards a deal. It's going to be painful for the simple reason, Ian, everybody needs one. The Iranians need a deal. Believe me, they've been hammered. The Americans need it, and the world needs it. They need to open that strait, including China, by the way, a de facto supporter of Iran.
Who needs it most?
Now, that is the question. I think in the short term, the West. Over the medium to long term, Iran. Look, Iran, don't forget its nuclear program was many things, but above all, it was political leverage for a country that has none. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the very few cards Iran can play, and it's playing it very, very well. But there's a limit to what it can do. It needs the strait flowing. Look, you noticed over the weekend, there were protests in Iran again, which is partly why they started attacking Israel. They claim they were doing it because Israel was attacking Hezbollah. Israel has been attacking Hezbollah for decades. The Iranians never did it. They wanted to draw Israel back in. For the moment, they need an external enemy because they have huge problems internally. So I think in the short term, the Iranians have the upper hand, but the longer this goes on, the worse it will get for Iran. 6 months, a year, 2 years down the line. Let's see. But for the moment, pain for everyone.
Why do you think that the protests that broke out after Christmas and the New Year haven't been replicated in the last 5 months?
Well, because Iran's been at war. Look, until they cut everything and things are slowly coming back on, I was speaking to people inside Iran. First of all, they were being hammered. The sheer amount of ordnance that was being dropped on Iran. And to be fair, the Israelis and Americans did a pretty good job of avoiding civilian casualties, but they couldn't go out because they were being bombed constantly. Secondly, the repression apparatus kicked into full effect. There were checkpoints everywhere. But look, now that it's easing off, you're seeing them coming back onto the streets. You saw the students over the weekend complaining about the disaster that is the higher education system. Don't forget that before the war, the Iranian people were in open revolt. Open revolt. This regime has no legitimacy. I'm not saying the war was a success or it was even wise to do it, but don't forget Iran has been really badly hammered. For the moment, they have an external enemy. Let's see 6 months a year if their apparatus, their ability to oppress their people still exists.
Thank you very much indeed. That's David Patrikarakos there. Right, let me tell you who's on Cross Question at 8. Dawn Butler, the Labour MP for Brent East. Lord Daniel Hannan, Conservative peer and Director of the Institute of Economic Affairs. Caroline Voden, Liberal Democrat school spokesperson and MP for South Devon. And Festus Akinbusoye, who is a Conservative local councillor, but also former Police and Crime Commissioner. They'll be here to answer your questions from 8. We'll open up the phone lines now for Cross Question, 0345 6060 973. You're listening to LBC. I'm Iain Dale. It's 7:46.
This is LBC.
Tony, what do you want to tell me? Good morning.
Scott has called from Glasgow. Hi, Scott.
Jane's in Camden first. Hi, Jane.
He was actually treated in a way that meant an accusation of a racial slur was treated more seriously than an act of murder.
Hear every side of the story.
Why isn't Parliament right now passing laws to make it an offence for everybody to carry a weapon?
Why do we have these views on other cultures?
I think Britain is a tinderbox. We work together, we speak calmly, listen hard, or we burn together.
There's something fundamentally wrong, isn't there, with policing in this country?
We're in a worse state than we was 20 odd years ago, and I'll put that mainly down to policing.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. LBC, leading Britain's conversation.
individual incidents, however tragic they are, to conduct violent protests. We are in for a very, very horrible time. So how do we stop that happening? Earl is in Croydon. Hello, Earl.
Iain, good to speak to you. I'm a little bit hesitant here, so you will help me, if anything. First, I came to this country in the 1960s. My parents came here as a Windrush people. Now, what I'm trying to say is this. We people from the Caribbean have the same habits as you, Iain. We live the same lifestyle as the white British people. We got the same religions. We eat similar food. We speak English in a different accent. But we are the same as the British. Now, when my parents came here, they came here invited by the British government. And I came here after them, like a lot of Caribbean people. And they came here and worked. Now, what I'm hearing here, this guy has come over to Ireland or whatever, and within 2 years, he got his right to stay. Now, my lady she's Jamaican. She's had to wait 15 years to get her stay sorted out and pay thousands of pounds to get her stay sorted out. These people are coming here from Islamic Muslim countries and they're being treated differently. There's no doubt then that is putting resentment in the white people's faces. They're sending people over here, they're putting them up in hotels and all of that. I'm hearing it, my friend. I'm hearing it. And of course, there are white people here that might be lazy and they don't want to do a job. There might be others that are working, but they're struggling. But when they see that these people, or they hear from their neighbors or their friends that people are coming here and getting put up in hotels and all of that, and so on, it's going to cause resentment. And a lot of these guys are coming here from countries that were torn up by war. And the British and the Americans went into Iraq, they went into Afghanistan, they went into Libya. These are Muslim countries. And when they go into these countries and make a war, the trouble is then you're going to have the winners and the losers. The losers are going to run as refugees. And what I'm noticing, they don't run to Saudi Arabia. They run over to the Western world. They don't run to Oman or Egypt or whatever. They come to the Western world. And they come in here with a different mindset, a different principle. They're different to we, the Caribbean people that came here in the 50s and the 60s.
Well, you're absolutely
to come here.
You're absolutely right. And the person, hang on a second, Earl. The person that's been arrested and charged in Belfast came from Sudan, a very war-torn country. So presumably the basis of his asylum application was, well, I've come from a war-torn country. If I go back there, I'll die.
Yes, but but you should be able to get what they call this stay here forever. You got to go through the look. My lady has just had to go to a test. She had to answer lots of questions. You have to get about 90% of the questions correct. And you have to pay thousands of pounds. And now she's applying for citizenship. She's had to get 2 referees. In fact, she's got 2 white people that she used to work for. And she has to send everything to the Home Office. And it costs thousands of pounds. We're from Barbados, Jamaica, and by the way, you're invited to Barbados. Barbados takes straight people, gay people, everything. Unlike some of the Islamic Muslim countries. I have to get that one in. We come from the Caribbean. We're Caribbean, Commonwealth country, and we speak English like you, Iain. Maybe a different accent. And we get difficulties coming here. And yet still we got people coming from all these other countries. They're coming here, the men are coming here with a different way of looking at women, looking at sexuality and everything. And they're coming here and getting unlimited stay. That is wrong, and that is going to cause problems with the white people, whether we like it or not. Prime Minister has to stop being an international Prime Minister and start dealing with the domestic problems here. And the first thing is they got to stop the people coming here in a boat. When they come in a boat, leave them there, put some tents there by the boat, by the beaches, and give them the alternative to go back to where they're coming from. Because I'll tell you what, this man here, what his name is, Farage, he will become the Prime Minister. But one more thing I would say to the British people. When Farage becomes the Prime Minister, he can't rule like Donald Trump in America. Because any laws he passes has to go through the House of Commons. And then when it goes through the House of Commons, it has to go to the House of Lords. And the House of Lords might reject some of it. And then you're going to have a constitutional crisis. Because I don't think that in the House of Lords, Reform has got a lot of lawyers that will back them up.
Well, they haven't got any, because Keir
Starmer
won't give them any. Keir Starmer won't appoint any reform because there are none.
So Nigel Farage is going to come in and bring in these laws. Oh, yes, we're going to send back. I mean, you've got this idiot here, Yusuf, in the thing. He's going to round up 400,000 illegal immigrants. Where is he going to put them? So the British people ought to work out what they want, what they're wishing for. Because Farage, I don't hate Farage. I think he's got a point. But when he comes into the prime minister, he can't act like Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump, the president, has got certain powers. And he is flying by the wind, by the way, because he is trying to get away from the Senate and the Congress. Farage ain't going to have that here. If they get voted in, they have to go through the House of Commons. And then when they go through the House of Commons, it has to then go up to the House of Lords. The House of Lords don't approve of it, then you're going to have a constitutional crisis in the country. And that is what British people ought to remember. But they should not allow people here and give them unlimited leave just like that. We Caribbean people have to wait 15, 20 years to get unlimited thing. Not me. I came in the 1960s with on the back of my parents. We were the Windrush generation. And I want the white people here to realize that we Windrush people came here on the invite of the British government, and we behave ourselves. We have the same religion as you guys. We speak the same language. We eat the same food and everything. We're not like these people that are coming from these countries. And another thing, when this idiot Trump is finished with Iran, you will see more refugees coming here from Iran. Mark my word. Ian, nice to talk to you. I love you.
And that was a party political broadcast on behalf of Earl in Croydon. Well, listen, Earl, that was a great call. You've got a lot of love on my text screen here. Lots of people agreeing with you, saying that you are bang on. Thank you very much indeed.
We're bang on, man. We're bang on. Keir Starmer has to stop this international crap, standing upside down in the street, shaking hands with the French president. No. Get on your backside and stop the people coming over in the boats. And these people coming here don't have the same principles as the British. We are Caribbean people. We have the same principles. And look at the prejudice that we went through. And as for marching, everybody talk about marches of the Jewish people. I used to see marches in the 1970s with the National Front and the BNP. And we black people, we had to take it on board and protect ourselves.
Honestly, yeah? my text screen is about to self-combust because of the number of people texting praising you, Earl. You should stand for Parliament yourself, I think. Right, let's finish off the hour with Matt in Walton-on-Thames. Matt, I'm sorry I've restricted your time because we were all enjoying Earl, but do carry on.
No, that's fine. He was fantastic, really, really was. I just want to get something clear from the start. We need to understand why these riots are happening. And I think everyone's just missing the mark here, because it's not about race or skin colour, hating people. It's just about numbers. And we do in this country have a migrant problem. It's about how many people one country can realistically cope with. And because everywhere you look in the UK now, the same problem keeps coming up. There's not enough houses, rented too high, young people unable to buy homes, families stuck on waiting lists, GP appointments impossible to get, hospitals stressed, dentists are full, school under pressure, classrooms are busy, teachers overworked, you name it. It all comes down to that we have a migrant problem. We have a numbers problem. We've just taken far too many people in, and we're now at boiling point, and this is just what happens. And we're not, just because you might say, oh, but when a white person killed by a white person, then no one's taken to the street. Just because that's our own, you look after your own, as in,
yes, but,
we can deal with that.
But you can't just look at this terrible incident in Belfast, this attack, the guy clearly wanted to kill Mr. Ogilvy. You can't just take one person who is non-white, who is from Sudan, and then basically say that, well, that shows the danger of allowing anybody in from that kind of nation.
It's not one, though, is it? This has happened many times in the past.
Can you give me examples? I mean...
Yeah, Lee Rigby. There we go, straight off the bat.
I mean, also, let's remember he's a suspect at the moment and hasn't been found guilty. Matt, thank you very much indeed. Well, I'm sure this subject will come up in Cross Question in just a couple of minutes' time, where I'll be joined by the Labour MP for Brent East, Dawn Butler, Dan Hannan, Lord Hannan, Conservative peer, who's the director of the Institute of Economic Affairs think tank. He's just taken over in that role. Caroline Voden is a Liberal Democrat MP for South Devon. She speaks for them on schools. And Festus Akinbusoye, who is a Conservative local councillor in Westminster and former police and crime commissioner for Bedfordshire. They're here to answer your calls on 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp us on that number. You can text 84850. And of course, as ever, you can watch us on the LBC app, Global Player, or the LBC YouTube channel.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the family of the man stabbed in Belfast on Monday night say violence isn't welcome following a night of unrest in the city. A 30-year-old Sudanese refugee has been remanded in custody charged with attempted murder. Meanwhile, a 42-year-old man's appeared in court charged with rioting and assaulting a police officer. Justice Secretary David Lammy says those all involved in violence will be prosecuted.
We cannot, though, have a situation where people feel terrorised in their home. And so, of course, I condemn what we saw overnight. The full force of the law will be brought to bear on this issue.
Donald Trump's warned the United States will hit Iran hard today if no peace deal is finalised. Tensions have risen again after he accused Tehran of shooting down a military helicopter over the Strait of Hormuz. A 14-year-old girl arrested after 3 people were stabbed at a school in Manchester has been detained under the Mental Health Act. 2 teenagers and a staff member were injured in Blakely yesterday. And Ben Stokes won't be playing in the second test against New Zealand. The England captain and teammate Gus Atkinson have been dropped after breaching ECB protocols. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed up 27 points at 10,254. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.16. LBC weather turning dry for a time overnight, but low cloud and rain will arrive in the west through the early hours, lows of 7 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
I've looked after my kids since they were born. Now they've got kids. I still want to look after them. I don't want them struggling to make decisions about my money or my health if I can't. So we made a lasting power of attorney. Now, if I can't speak for myself, they'll speak for me. It's a weight off for all of us, isn't it?
Yes, Mum. Lasting power of attorney. Search your voice, your decision.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Very good evening. 3 minutes past 8 is the time on LBC. Welcome to Wednesday's Cross Question. On the panel with me, making her debut on the show, to my left, Caroline Voden, who's the Liberal Democrat school spokesperson and MP for presumably one of the most beautiful constituencies in the country, South Devon.
The most beautiful.
I didn't think you would disagree with that. Next to her is Dan Hannan, Lord Daniel Hannan, Conservative peer, who's the director of the Institute of Economic Affairs think tank, new in that role. To my right, Dawn Butler, Labour MP for Brent East, definitely not new in that role. And next to her, Festus Akinbusoye. I knew I would do that. I always have a problem with your name.
I still love you anyway.
Akinbusoye, is that right?
Perfect.
Thank God for that.
Perfect.
Let's see if I can keep that up for the rest of the programme. He's former police and crime commissioner for Bedfordshire. Is now a local councillor in Westminster for the Conservatives. They are here to answer your questions on 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850 and you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Right, first question from Nicole in Sutton Coldfield. Do you agree with the Northern Irish First Minister that the protests in Belfast are only motivated by racism, while Michelle O'Neill has condemned the violence seen following Monday evening's knife attack, saying it's only thuggery and racism? Dawn Butler.
I think, first of all, we have to acknowledge that it was a horrific attack and take the words of the family into consideration. I mean, I'm sure you've read the statement on your show, and where they've said that we do not want this terrible tragedy to be used to divide people or fuel hostility. We are asking the media and the public to please give us some space. And what you have to ask yourself, I think, is, when do people get angry? Do you always get angry when there's
hosting a show like this? I do, yeah.
An horrific attack, and that's the thing. You shouldn't be selective. You shouldn't be. What happened is an absolute tragedy. What happened after that in regards to the process? They were not peaceful, and burning people out of their houses because of the colour of their skin is not the kind of society or British values.
So Michelle O'Neill was right.
Well, I think that in part, yes, because why are you burning people out of their houses because of the colour of their skin? What has motivated you to do that? That's the question we need to ask people.
But when the family in this case, in the case of Henry Novak in Southampton, they both called for calm, and all politicians understandably have done that quite rightly. But when you see the kind of scenes that we saw last night in Belfast, which were far worse than anything we saw in Southampton, the question remains, well, what can authorities, what can governments do to try and ensure that that sort of thing doesn't happen again? Because once you have summer riots, they can easily multiply over the rest of the country, and I don't say that lightly.
No, and I think people have a right to be angry, but we should protest peacefully. You should protest with your voice. You shouldn't protest by burning people, innocent people, out of their homes. And I do feel that there are people who are inciting racial hatred in our country right now. And that is really, it's making people like me very scared. I get so much abuse, right? And whenever something happens and people start the pile-on and the dog whistles, oh my goodness, the kind of abuse I get is horrendous. So I've already got a number of people who have been arrested. Some have gone to prison. And we have to be careful. The people who are inciting racial hatred do not care about the end outcome. They care about trying to get votes and making people angry. Because the way our brains work, if you feel that you're in fear and you're angry, you have to do something. That's how our brain works. So they think, well, we make people angry and then they'll vote for us. They don't really care about the after effect or the long-term effect. And I think we have to. It's our responsibility to not just care, but to show British values. We're not about a divisive country.
OK. Dan Hannon.
Well, first of all, there is never a good mob, right? I hope one thing we can all agree on here, there is never any excuse for violence and disorder, whatever the motives of the people doing it. Is Michelle O'Neill right? Look, I can't peer into people's souls. I've no idea what is motivating people. It's conventional to say people are angry. I suspect quite a lot of people who engage in vandalism and thuggery are actually just slightly getting off on it, right, and enjoying it. I'm not sure that they are motivated by anger. So we should all be unequivocally on the side of the police, of the restoration of order. We want people to feel safe. The first duty of any government is to ensure that its citizens are secure and are able to go about their lawful business in peace. So that means, first of all, you do not tolerate any of this kind of mob violence, whether it's Southampton or Belfast or anywhere else. But second, you also have to control your borders. One of the things that makes a country safe is knowing who's coming in and allowing people to come in. We're almost negatively selecting, because of the way our asylum system works, by granting asylum to people who probably do have a well-founded fear of persecution because they left their other country for a reason, because they were thought to be a threat to public order or to the state in that country. And I think this has just been allowed to carry on for far too long, largely, I think, because we have an administrative state and a judiciary who see it as their responsibility, always and everywhere, to try and block deportation orders.
But the point here is, though, that he came over the border from Dublin to Belfast, having flown from Sudan to Paris to Dublin. And, I mean, that there is no border there. I mean, there is no solution to that, is there? Unless you put up border posts, which nobody is going to do. So it's one of those political problems that will forever remain a problem because there is no solution to it.
Well, I mean, of course, there are solutions if there is will. One solution is just to have data sharing between the countries in the common borders, the common border zone. So the Republic of Ireland, the Channel Islands, the Isle of Man and the UK, sharing all their immigration data, possibly even having low-key inspection of each other's facilities to make sure they're all happy about it. I think that's the flip side of having this common travel zone, which everyone wants to preserve. But I think, look, this is fundamentally a question of willpower. Yes, he happened to come in, as you say, through the Irish Republic, but we have people, we see them every day entering this country illegally without. Why are they doing that? Let me go back a step. Right? Why, if you're in France, which is a safe country, are you prepared to risk life and limb to come here? I suggest that it's not because you want to live on £49 a week. Right? The reason that people are prepared to take that risk and make that journey is because they know that they are highly unlikely to be deported. Even if they are, even when their final appeal is turned down, they are not.
Well, we're going slightly off the question here. Festus.
One of my concerns about this is the kind of selective outrage that we tend to see, and I think the First Minister was talking about just a few days ago, before this horrific incident. There was a really, really horrendous case of someone was stabbed multiple times in public. There was no burning of anything. We now have a situation where in Northern Ireland we got people putting up checkpoints, for cars to find out who's in the car. If they happen to be a black person or they happen to be someone that looks like a foreigner, then, good luck to them. I mean, that is absolutely unacceptable. We cannot have a country where people feel it is okay or justifiable to do this under any circumstances. However, where I think I can agree with Dan as well is that it is important that lawmakers take the concerns of the public seriously, right? So yes, there's no justification for mob rule. We don't want that in Britain, and there's no room for that in Britain. And my thoughts are with the police officers, of course, the victim who's now, fighting for dear life. But at the same time, it's important that lawmakers realize that this issue of illegal immigration or legal migration and some of the challenge that come with that is taken seriously, rather than, throwing shade at people and calling them names and, casting aspersions at their intentions. That is very important that they take that very seriously.
I mean, you've been a police and crime commissioner. What do you think about this recent debate, which I think is applicable here, about the police being afraid of being depicted as racist?
There is no doubt in my mind that there is a concern about that. It comes from a very good place. Right? Anyone who knows the history of British policing and black people or Asian people, there is a dark history there. From the Scarman report to the Macpherson report to the Lamy report to every other report in between, even the Casey report, found the same kind of issues. Right? So I think what the intention was behind this by the National Police Chiefs Council, who unfortunately have been too silent on this issue over the last couple of days, in my opinion, is to try and find a way to address these historic issues. But unfortunately, what I think they have done is by creating this guidance, they have overcorrected in a way that police officers now are very, very concerned about, if I was to be seen as being racist, I have to go through the professional standards. I've got a 12-month investigation against me. It ends up not being proven, but that is my career, in tatters potentially. So it started from a very good place, in my opinion. But unfortunately, I think we've got to the point where we're now saying that white people cannot be a victim of racism. So in that definition of anti-racism, who is included in that definition? And in my opinion, it was the wrong thing to do.
Okay. Caroline Verdon for the Lib Dems.
Well, I think the first thing to say is that what happened in Belfast was absolutely chilling. And, my thoughts are with Stephen Ogilvie, who is now in hospital and going to make a very long and difficult recovery. But I agree with Dawn. There's absolutely no reason we don't want mob rule. We shouldn't have mobs out on the street. And I understand that people are horrified by what they saw. I should think the people in Belfast feel very frightened and very unsafe. But this anger was whipped up on social media. And I think we really need to focus on that. The algorithms are serving these tweets that are basically inciting violence. And we've seen Tommy Robinson do it. There was a rally outside Parliament last night, as well as all over the country. And that is what is whipping people up. If they weren't being incited to do that, they would not be out in the streets burning people's homes. And in fact, one of the people who lost their homes last night in Belfast was white and had lived there for 13 years and came from Northern Ireland and has now lost everything. It's not going to help resolve the situation. We have a problem with our asylum system. It's very complicated. It is not going to be helped by people lighting fires and causing outrage in the streets.
You mentioned people being whipped up by people on social media, and we've all seen the tweet from Elon Musk. But what can you do about that, apart from close X down?
Well, I think Ofcom should have more powers and use the powers it does have and use them more quickly. I mean, we should not have platforms operating in this country which allow extremists to whip up violence on our streets.
And also, I mean, maybe for all of you, very briefly, politicians on what is loosely termed the far right, and I will include Restore in this, we've heard nothing from Rupert Lowe condemning this.
Rupert Lowe has been tweeting all day about this and retweeted by Elon Musk. I mean, I would say that he is whipping up more violence than anyone else over the last 24 hours, certainly.
Dan, what do you think about the sort of what people term as the far right? I mean, some people will include Nigel Farage in the far right. I don't include him in the far right. But, I mean, I haven't heard anything from him today on this. Well, and he was a bit late condemning the violence in Southampton.
I'm trying to spend less time on X, so I can't tell you who hasn't commented. I mean, I would hope that anyone who wants to put himself forward for elected office in this country will, the most basic barrier to entry is we are against mob rule. There is there is no such thing as good violence, whatever the motives of the people doing it. And I've never had any time for politicians who say, well, of course, I'm against mob rule, but we must understand that. As apologists for both sets of paramilitaries in Northern Ireland did during the Troubles, it was always a bad argument. Well, I wouldn't ban Twitter, by the way. I would not put us in the same category as China, right? If somebody is saying something that you find obnoxious but that it isn't illegal, then going after the platform seems to me an excessive authoritarian.
But when that platform is essentially being abused by its owner, who is promoting Rupert Lowe and his acolytes deliberately through an algorithm, which, I mean, I can't remember how many followers he has, but every single one of his tweets is now getting 500,000 views. Well, he doesn't merit 500,000 views in any normal world.
Then don't follow it. I mean, I don't see how this is a question for the law. Right, you can choose to, like with anything, it's a voluntary contract. Right? This is what we do. You don't have to join, but if you do, this is what you're going to see.
All right. Well, we're seeing pictures from Belfast right now showing protesters throwing bricks at police and lighting flares. Water cannon are being used against the protesters. It's still obviously light in Belfast. I mean, these things always seem to get worse when it gets dark. I suppose people feel that they might not be so easily identified. So we'll keep an eye on exactly what's going on, and we'll be taking more of your questions in just a few moments. It's 18 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
in the UK. I think all of us as politicians have a duty and a responsibility to try and calm things down. And I think anybody who is whipping things up should seriously think about the effects that might have.
Dan?
Oh, I don't think we're close to rape. It's not the kind of country we are. I think this is exaggerated.
Well, I remember 1981, which none of you probably will do, but there were, I mean, it was more than race, but there were riots in Brixton, which then spread north to Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, and then Bristol. And it does. There is a precedent for this sort of thing happening.
Do you remember the riots in 2012 or whatever it was, which started in 2011, which started in North London? I mean, just apply a bit of Occam's razor here, right? What was actually driving them? It was that there were the images from what happened in Tottenham. Everyone saw that the police weren't intervening. It took a little bit of time for everyone to work out that if the police wouldn't intervene there when they were out in force, they could probably get away with a similar thing in Manchester or whatever. Was that a race riot? I wouldn't call it that. I mean, you could make the argument it was caused by a racial dispute, but I wouldn't call those race riots. I would just call that general disorder.
Okay, Festus?
Given the pace at which and the frequency at which this is happening, it's only a matter of time before one of them catches on. Right, and it's only a numbers game because you're having, this one now in Northern Ireland. We had Southampton. It's only a matter of time before one of these kind of outbursts become a nationwide issue. So I wish I could be as optimistic as Dan is, even though I'm normally an optimistic guy. I think we are running the risk of that becoming more of a flashpoint in Britain today.
Dawn?
I think we've got to follow the money, power, and ego. Right? I think that Twitter, and I still call it Twitter because I know it winds Musk up, right? So he's using this as his platform. He says you fight or die. This is incitement of racial hatred. We have to do something about it legislatively because we don't allow the incitement of racial hatred. You've got Laxley Lennon. You've got him inciting hatred on our streets, in our communities. We have to stop it. And the difference between previous times and now is social media. We're not privy to, well, we actually do know the algorithms now. We know that, if you do negative stuff, you say negative things. If you say inflammatory things, it rises to the top and it will reach more people. We know that it's manipulated so that Musk and his mates can be amplified wherever they want to, so they can do a call out, they can do a dog whistle. We know that. We know there's a growth of the incel movement. We know there's a growth of racism. We know there's a growth of misogyny. We know involuntary celibates. We know that there's a growth of all of this stuff because it suits the narrative of a certain group of people, and we have to be mindful of this.
Dawn, would you actually prosecute? I mean, if I think of a couple of cases of where people have rhetorically called for violence, neither of which resulted in a conviction. Bobby Villan at Glastonbury saying death to the IDF. Or Kneecap, the rap group Kneecap, saying the only good Tory is a dead Tory. I would say those are figures of speech. I would not expect somebody to be incited by it. I wouldn't expect a stoned concert goer from Glastonbury to take the first flight to Ben Gurion and hurl himself on the first Israeli soldier he sees, because we recognise that it's a figure of speech. Now, do we really want to go down the road of prosecuting anyone who uses that kind of language?
It's not just about language, it's the incitement. And the thing...
How is Elon Musk incitement and those aren't?
Okay. The lack of understanding here is the algorithms, the people who they are appealing to and how they're getting to them. That is a serious lack of understanding. And it's a difficult thing to understand if you're not in that world, if you're not a part of it. So if you're saying you fight or you die, if you're deliberately inciting racial hatred, then we have legislation and laws against that.
So just because you think Elon Musk was incitement saying fight or die, but the other two examples were not.
We have to... I didn't say that. I'm saying if anybody's inciting racial hatred or against the law, the Public Order Act 1986, then we have to implement the law as written.
From what I'm hearing here,
they are inciting racial hatred.
You seem to be talking about racial hatred being incited. What about any other kind of hatred being incited? Because if someone says that the only good Tory is a dead Tory, as a black man who is a Tory myself,
I do not.
Because you're just talking about the racial.
Yes, that's because that was a subject of discussion. I do not condone anybody saying the only good Tory is a dead Tory.
Do we want to prosecute anyone who says that? Is that really proportionate?
I do not condone that in any shape or form. I do not condone violence against any group of people or any minoritized people. I do not condone that at all.
Tories are definitely minoritized.
I hope that's made that clear.
Okay.
Well, okay,
right.
but so you're saying you wouldn't prosecute, or you would in all of these cases, or is it only the ones when it's on our side?
It's not for me to make a judgment on everything right now.
Well, you just did make a judgment about Elon Musk.
People who encourage other people out on the streets to burn houses down and inflict damage and injury, they should be held criminally responsible.
If there is, okay, but what I'm saying is there needs to be a consistent definition of incitement.
Absolutely.
Now,
That's why we have laws.
I would have a very high level. I wouldn't prosecute any of these cases. But I'm saying if you do want to prosecute Elon Musk, then there are an awful lot of other people who, by exactly that logic, you'd have to prosecute, starting with
That's why we have legislative procedures.
Okay, let's move on and take a call from Irene in Southampton, who's a new caller to LBC. So welcome, Irene. What would you like to ask our panel?
Hi. I'll just do it quick because my baby's awake now. First thing, I want to say thank you, Iain, for seeing me as a human being. I'm a nurse and I'm a Filipino, and my question is, how can you make the country safe for me as well? Because I don't feel safe anymore.
You're saying that because I think in the last hour we had a caller, or was it a texter, who was basically saying, well, deport all people who have a leave to remain here. And I made the point that, well, our hospitals would effectively cease to function. And I know that because when I was in St Thomas's, every single nurse was from another country. So, I mean, and it's awful. And people who've come to this country, they want to do the right thing. They've contributed to the country, and now they don't feel safe. Well, Festus, how can that change?
I came to this country when I was 13 years old from Nigeria. Grew up in Canning Town, but that was around the time when you had the National Front and the BNP.
That's why you're a West Ham supporter, right?
No, Arsenal forever, my friend. Arsenal for life, Gunner for life, Gunner for life. I'm sure you were at the trophy parade a couple of weeks ago in North London.
Blank that out.
And I know what it feels like to have these kind of hate surrounding you. It is not pleasant whatsoever at all. And one of my real worries about the way that we're going in Britain at the moment is the way that anyone who looks different, sounds different, or is perceived as different will be automatically castigated and looked down upon, and you're told, go back where you come from, irrespective of what you contribute to this country. And I think one of my real worries is that where does this end? Because every time something happens that involves someone that looks like me, the reaction that you get on social media is, oh, well, another Nigerian, another African, another immigrant. See, you're all the same. And this is a really dangerous point that we're getting into in Britain. And I really hope that somehow, some ways, those who have the power to be able to calm things down, just think carefully about the tone of their language and what they're saying and how they're coming across, because it is quite frightening in some cases.
And do you think that if they would take a black person, you for instance, and then distribute it 1 million times to people and say, go get this guy, do you think that's something that just should be excused? Do you think they've got a right to do that? Or do you think there's an incitement in that somewhere?
Well, that obviously is incitement. Go get this guy. No one's arguing with that.
Well, this is what happens on social media. This is what happens. This is what you don't understand. And it's scary because we're, in a way, like you're talking about things. In a way, I mean, you can interrupt me all you like, Daniel. But I will finish my sentence. But if you want to interrupt, go ahead.
Well, tell me what I don't understand.
Well, go ahead. While you're interrupting me in the middle of saying something without actually making me land my point. But go ahead.
All right. Incitement means saying, let's go and get that guy. That is an ancient common law definition, that somebody needs to be plausibly incited by your words. Incitement does not mean saying there are too many immigrants in this country. There is a huge difference between urging people to commit an illegal act and expressing an opinion.
Okay. Can we get back to answering Irene's question? How can society make her, as a Filipino nurse working in the health service, she now feels unsafe in this country? How can she be made to feel safer?
Well, I think we have to make society safer by calling out people who are trying to divide our communities. And it's happening over and over again, and it's being normalised. There's language now that's been normalised that we wouldn't have accepted even 5 years ago. There's aggressions that are being normalised against different groups that we would not have accepted 5 years ago. There's things that are happening below the surface that we don't see because they're happening in social media, and we're not understanding it because we're not a part of it. So I think we have to tackle all of those things, and we have to tackle it with vigour, and we have to tackle it that we're determined to say that's not our country. And we have to stand up for people.
And perhaps we should also point out, I read this morning, that the man who attacked the attacker in Belfast and basically saved Stephen Ogilvy's life was an immigrant himself from I think Lithuania or one of the Baltic states. But because he's white...
This is exactly my point.
Yeah.
This is why we can't... This is the problem with judging people the way that... This is why we talk about... This is why people are asking the questions, do we think it's going to be a race riot? Because of the aggression and violence against people of colour at the moment. That's why the question is...
Caroline.
Well, to go back to Irene's question, first of all, I'd like to say thank you, Irene, for the work you do as a nurse in this country. And as Iain says, we rely on nurses and doctors and care workers who come here to fill the gaps in our workforce. And we wouldn't be able to keep our NHS running without them. What can we change in this country? I think as I've said already, I think we need to dial down the rhetoric. I think we need all politicians of all parties to be really careful and considerate about the way they talk about these issues. It doesn't mean you can't be angry, and it doesn't mean you can't want action. But you have to be very, very careful about what you're saying, particularly on social media. I think Dawn made a really good point that when we had those previous riots, we didn't have social media. We are operating in a really different environment now. But the other thing is, I think we need to do more to create a sense of community. I think a lot of people don't have a strong sense or identity of community, and I would say that a lot of that is because of the damage that has been done over the last decade to the infrastructure that supports communities. So fewer police on the streets, but also a 70% reduction.
I note that doesn't include the period of the Lib Dems were actually in government.
No.
70% reduction in youth clubs, which means that young people don't have somewhere to go, so they spend more time on social media, but there's less of a sense of belonging. Sure Start centres, all the kind of stuff that makes a community.
That happened when your party was a part of the coalition.
Some of it happened when we were in coalition.
The bulk of it happened during the coalition.
And it continued until the Tories left office. And, you know, I think it's a fair point to make that communities have felt...
OK, can we just hear from Dan on this first?
I would go back to something that Festa said, which I thought was important and which I hope we all agree with, which is you should not be judged by the actions of someone who happens to look like you, right? That is what we understand by an individualist society. We elevate the citizen above the collective. That is the basis of all Western freedom. It is the essence of what we mean by an open society. Now, we should apply that consistently. It means that you shouldn't say all in. It's kind of an obvious point, and it's bizarre that this needs saying, that there is a difference between somebody who applies and comes to this country legally and works, and somebody who enters in the back of a lorry and then commits a crime. I mean, it is to me bizarre that it's somehow considered improper to draw that distinction, right? Equally, though, we're all individuals. We're not defined by, exactly as Festa says, we're not defined by physiognomy, we're not defined by birth, we're not defined by ancestry. I think that we went through a very bad moment 6 years ago, during the mad summer of 2020, when actually everyone was being defined by race. In the height of the BLM moment, we're all white people, all black. And I think that we took a huge step back.
Mean?
Well, because the idea of collective guilt and ancestral responsibility, which is, to me, utter anathema to a free society, was normalised.
What do you mean by ancestral responsibility? What are you talking about?
Well, for example, the idea that you should, if you like, it's the difference between people asking to be treated the same and people asking to be treated differently on the basis of ancestry, right? And that was something that that spilled out in 2020
That's still a lot of words
and became,
about making without making sense to what you're saying. What are you actually saying?
Let me try putting it in a different way, Dawn. Thomas Sowell put this very well. He said, you cannot maintain an open society on the basis that two babies born on the same day arrive in this world with a set of pre-existing grievances. Now, what happened after lockdown, with everyone cooped up and prone to these excitable and agitated ideas, is that people started doing precisely that. We got into this group thinking that the most important thing about you is your white or female or whatever.
Hang on. We've gone from talking about Irene in Southampton to Black Lives Matter. It's too far. And I'm 6 minutes late for the news, so I'm going to shut this down. It's 8:36. News headlines with Darryl Jackson.
The public transport network in Belfast has shut early as protesters gather for a second night of protests. Last night's violence was sparked by the stabbing of a man on Monday. Stephen Ogilvy's family say unrest is not welcome. It's unclear what Donald Trump's next move against Iran will be. The US president has threatened to bomb the country today unless a peace deal's finalised. And a 14-year-old girl who was arrested over a triple school stabbing has been detained under the Mental Health Act. 2 pupils and a member of staff were hurt in Blakely in North Manchester yesterday morning. LBC weather turning dry for a time overnight, but low cloud and rain will arrive in the west through the early hours, lows of 7 degrees.
LBC.
My darling, the carriage away.
Blooding. I have a question from Iain, and whenever we have someone from the IA on the programme, you know what's coming, don't you? He says, can you try and find out who funds the IEA and Mr Brexit Daniel Hannan?
Well, do you know, I arrived and I said, come on, guys, show me all the dark money. I mean, are we selling cigarettes to school children? Are we funding art? It's incredibly disappointing. I mean, I wish there were, I wish there was something to report. But we do have I have a really strong principle that privacy and individual rights matter. And you have the right, all of us have the right, to give anonymously to charity if we want.
But if you bring out a pamphlet, and the IA is famous for its pamphlet, it's always very interesting, shouldn't we have a right to know that pamphlet might have been funded by a particular lobby group?
And as I say, you'd be super disappointed if you saw the very ordinary donors who give us money. But the people who are asking us, the people who put that question, as your caller just did, who funds you, are not asking the question in good faith. They're not asking because they are just interested academically, and then they're not going to say, oh, thanks very much. They are asking us because they want to harass the donors. And that's why if the donors choose not to put their name out there because they don't want this hassle, I'm not going to put their names out for them.
OK, Dawn Butler is here. Here's not a similar question to you. Are you running for Mayor of London?
Am I running for Mayor of London? Well,
West Streeting thinks you are.
You know, Iain, that the standard line is there's no vacancy at the moment. But I've made no secret of the fact that if and when there is a vacancy, then I would most definitely be putting my name forward to be the next Mayor of London.
Excellent. That was the correct answer I was looking for. Right, let's go to a text question from Joey in Bromley. Would Rachel Reeves putting up taxes in order to keep this country safe be an admission that this government has failed and has no credibility left now? Now, the Chancellor has ruled out borrowing more money to fund an increase to defence spending, telling a FTSE 250 plus conference in London yesterday that despite the pain of higher taxes, it's better to do that than get into a situation that we were in before, where we had interest rates climbing and the risk premia for the UK climbing too. Risk premia is a financial markets term which I'm sure Dan
Premium.
where the asset being discussed, in this case, this country's economy, is considered very risky by investors. Well, of course, at the election, the Labour Party manifesto ruled out any rises in income tax. So what taxes should she put up then, Dawn?
Well, I think, first of all, we should talk about what's currently happening. The Prime Minister has confirmed our defence investment plan will be announced before the NATO summit, which is the beginning of July. So in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we'll kind of know what's happening and what the plan is. We've invested more in our defence than any other government. And I think we should talk about that. I mean, the government has signed 1,400 major contracts since the election, with 94% of spend going to UK-based companies. I think all of this is really quite important in regards to the country's defence. So I don't think it's about taxes right now. I think it's about what we're doing and how we're doing it.
But the military apparently think we need £28 billion extra spent on defence, and the rumour is that it'll only be £13 billion. And that will come from cutting 1% off the budgets of most other departments.
That's way above my pay grade in terms of looking at all of those figures. But NATO has said that we should have 3.5% of GDP by 2035, and the government's committed to that.
Festus.
Well, if there ever was any evidence that this government is a total, complete and utter failure, this has got to be it. When was the last time you heard a Labour MP, even including you, Dawn, talk about growing the economy? That seemed to be
they talk about it quite a lot, actually.
It's definitely not happening.
I didn't say it was happening. I said they talk about it a lot.
They talk about it, but then the evidence shows the actual opposite.
Well, the economy is growing, actually.
Well, no, I'm sure. The reason why you're having to raise taxes is because the economy is not growing, unemployment is up. The reality as well is that many people are losing their jobs, businesses are shutting down. We now have a situation where the government are talking as well about 1% being shaved off the departmental budget of every single government department. Right, so the economy is not growing.
But the economy is, the economy is growing, and actually, the economy grew more than.
Don't talk over me. You cautioned Dan. I'll caution you the same way as well. The reality is this: the Labour Party, in their manifesto, said they will not raise taxes. Will that now be happening?
Well,
and do you support that?
The economy is growing, though.
Do you support the fact that the Labour Party will now be breaking the manifesto commitment? Yes or no?
When it comes to...
Do you support the fact that the Labour government will be breaking the manifesto commitment? Yes or no?
Okay, so the thing is this. When it comes to fiscal responsibility, things change all the time. The last Tory government, I think, changed their fiscal rules 8 or 9 times. So it does change.
So it's okay then?
So it changes. That is just how government works. So if the manifesto commitment is broken because we're needing money to invest in defence, then I think actually I think that's okay.
So you're quite happy. So you're happy that a manifesto commitment is being broken.
As I say, when you...
So yes, you are.
When you listen, when you run a government,
as someone who runs, let me just finish answering.
Okay.
For me, as someone who runs a business, who has had to lay people off in the last 12 months because of the employee national insurance contribution which the Labour Party brought in, I can tell you now for a fact, we are not happy about the way things are. Many small.
So you don't want money going into defence?
Many. Listen, people want to have a job to pay their bills.
Yeah, I agree.
And that is not happening.
But two things can happen at the same time. Do you want money to be spent on defence or not?
I want the economy to grow.
Do you want money to be spent on defence or not?
Absolutely,
yes or
I
not?
do. And the way we can, one of the ways we can do that is not by taxes, but actually cutting spending.
Well, I didn't say that taxes were going to be.
Okay, we are going to hear from Dan. We're going to hear from Caroline, but not until we've heard from our advertisers. It's 8:45.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
Why do you need consultation? Who's going to say no?
Straight to the point.
Let's see. But why let's see? This is what I don't understand.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Why won't they listen to the most successful living Labour Prime Minister? Arguably the most successful Labour Prime Minister of all time.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store.
McDonald's Taste of the Tournament has arrived. Get the
international resilience. The world is a much more dangerous place than it was a few years ago with Trump and Putin and Netanyahu. So I think it is crucial that we invest in our defence forces. And we, at the Liberal Democrats, have a great proposition, which is that she could raise £20 billion by issuing defence bonds, which would give the British public a chance to buy into the defence of the nation with a secure investment. But not only that, we need growth in the economy. If they're going to be able to pay for public services...
The old coalition coming back together.
We do not want to see her cutting the spending of other departments. I'm the school spokesperson. The last thing I want to see is school spending being cut.
That would be a surprise if you did agree with that.
Across the UK. So our solution to that is that we negotiate a customs deal with the EU, which would boost our economy by £25 billion a year.
Dan is going to resist the temptation.
But let me answer your actual question.
The bonds idea, that's a good idea.
You gave the figures yourself just before the break, Iain, that the armed forces want 28 billion and might only get 13 billion. Over the same period, our benefits bill is rising by £42 billion, right, on government figures. We are spending nearly 5.5 times as much on social security as we are on actual security.
Yeah, but Dan, we need the money now for the army. We don't
maybe a start is not to put it up
negotiation
on other
about
things,
the welfare
right?
bill.
Well, but we are making decisions all the time. There was supposed to be a welfare bill in the King's speech. We made the government made a decision not to have one. They made a decision last summer to back off the reform of PIPs. So we're making decisions all the time that are pushing.
But redesigning the welfare system will take a long time to do it properly.
Yes,
you can't just slash and burn.
Hang on, but we are since the election. Decisions have been made that have repeatedly pushed that number up. We now have 3,000 people a day signing on as to ill to work. And here is, I think, just the country, the figure that tells me that our country is doomed unless we can fix this. The amount of money now spent on benefits for working age adults, so we're not counting pensions, which is the big one, is now 333 billion a year on Treasury figures. All of income tax, all the bands put together raises 331 billion. Okay, so just think about that for a second. All of the income tax paid by every working person in this country is less than the money claimed by people of working age who are not working. Now, that is not a sustainable position. And so to say we should be raising taxes further and slowing growth even more when we have got the taxes at the highest level they've been since we were coming back from the full mobilization after 1945 is absolutely crazy. We need to be cutting those big bills.
What about Caroline's idea about defence bonds? Because, I think that is, I don't know the detail of it, but it sounds like an interesting proposal.
Sure, but we're dancing around the edge of this, right?
No,
it's £20 billion.
£20 billion is a good start.
No, because we are. That's just another kind of borrowing when we already owe our entire GDP in debt. When we borrowed last year about 150 billion. Borrowing doesn't stop being borrowing just because you call it investment, Caroline. We borrowed 150 billion pounds last year. We spent 110 billion of it paying interest on past borrowing, not paying back the debt, just fending off previous creditors, right?
Which is why we need to grow the economy, Dan, which is why we need to repair our relationship with Europe.
No, stop goading him, Caroline.
If you really, keep going, Caroline. Keep going. If you really want to go down the road of saying
8% of GDP, 8%, that's what we've lost every year because of Brexit.
Anyone who quotes that figure disqualifies themselves from the conversation. That has just been so debunked by absolutely everyone. But tell me why you would like the customs union.
No, we're not going to the customs union, despite Caroline's valiant efforts to make us do so.
I don't think they know what the customs union is.
No, please. Let's move on to a WhatsApp question from Olivia in Bristol. Is the Pensions Minister's old think tank saying the triple lock is unfair and must go the final nail in the coffin of this scandal? Now, the Resolution Foundation, which used to be run by the Pensions Minister Torsten Bell, has said today that the triple lock was always a poorly designed, unfair, arbitrary ratchet that we could never afford, adding that it is not said enough in polite company that the triple lock is a terrible policy. Now, the custom on this programme is for all the politicians on the panel, when they get this question, to say, we're fully committed to the triple lock. And then as soon as the red light goes off, they say, of course, we know it's got to go. Now, are you going to be totally honest on this panel? Caroline Voden, let's start with you.
Well, I'm not going to say it's got to go, but I am going to say that I think we do have an issue with intergenerational inequality in this country, and I think that young people are really, really feeling the pinch. You know, we've got people paying back a huge amount on student loans. They can't afford houses. They're not finding jobs.
We'll get rid of the triple lock, and that can fund a lot of the things for young people. So I think there is a conversation
to be had, but I think it's really important to remember that there are an awful lot of pensioners who are being whose income is very, very low because all they have is the state pension. There are also a lot of pensioners who have big fat private pensions as well.
So you're open to a conversation about the triple lock?
I would be open to a conversation about how pensions are designed. And
you're going to get Wendy Chamberlain, your chief whip, on the phone to you tomorrow morning for that.
That's my personal opinion. That I'm not saying anything about the triple lock, but I'm saying that those pensioners on the lowest incomes absolutely need to be protected. But there are potentially other pensioners, very wealthy pensioners, who maybe, let's just leave it there.
Dan.
Of course, that was the proposal that was backed away from, to protect only the lowest and low. I mean, I'm obviously, as you say, I'm non-binary and non-partisan, but even when I was a party politician, I was very clear that the triple lock was unsustainable. I completely agree with the Resolution Foundation. I also think that people of my age should not expect to retire at anything like the current retirement age. I think we need to allow pensions policy, state pension policy and public sector pensions policy to reflect changes in longevity. And this isn't even really a question of fairness. It's a question of affordability. When the money isn't there, it doesn't matter what you think is fair or unfair. There's no, you can't wish something into existence by saying it would be fair. The number of people of working age is dwindling as a proportion of the population. The number of retirees is growing and they're living longer. And we have to allow policy to reflect that change, which is, by the way, a good change. It's good that we're healthier and living longer.
Festus.
In Jeremy Hunt's new book, Can Britain Be Rich Again, he kind of touched on this issue. And I think it is something that we have to take very seriously, because for me, as a dad to children who are within the age of 17 and 20 to 23 years old, I see the real pressure points that young people are facing in this country today. It is extremely tough. Just today, I spoke with 3 young people, all at university, either moving out of London because they can't afford to live here anymore, or they moved back home in Brighton and they're commuting because it's cheaper for them, to commute.
That's not cheap.
No.
That's not cheap, but it's cheaper for them to commute from Brighton to Queen Mary and Westfield University than to actually live in London.
Yeah.
And for me,
I find that quite difficult to believe. Brighton is a very expensive city.
I am not making it up. I'm not making it up, right? And the reality is this: we have got to be able to at least have a discussion. In a free society, there should be no sacred cows. I think at least have a conversation and explain why the different options have to be on the table. But at the moment, I think obviously Kemi's right that we have to keep the triple lock, and I'm going to have to kind of toe the party line in that regard for now, but very mindful of the challenges.
But there are demographic challenges.
Massive.
The demographics of this country are changing so massively that we are going to have so many
And of course, there's the challenge of the customs union too.
Absolutely.
You're going to say she was just saying really good there.
If we joined a customs union, we'd have enough money to pay the pensions.
I think we should let Caroline talk more about Brexit in the EU and the customs union.
Next time.
Even the exchanging of data. When we was in
no, come on, look, we're running out of time. We've only got 2 minutes to go.
I think that we shouldn't pit young people against retirees and pensioners, and I think that happens too often. I'm committed to the triple lock. There you go.
You don't think there's a conversation to be had?
I think we always should have a conversation about anything to do with finance, our country, legislation, unintended consequences. I think we should be able to sit down and have sensible conversations where it's not sensationalised or people want just kind of one-line answers.
Well, talking of sensible conversations, let's go to our fun question, because that's never sensible. Miranda in Cheshire says, since the BBC has cancelled this year's Doctor Who Christmas special, thank the Lord, which TV show or film which is regularly on our screens over Christmas is always a must-see for you? Caroline.
Well, for me, it's got to be Love Actually, because I'm an absolute sucker for Hugh Grant as Prime Minister, standing up to America and dancing down the corridor in number 10. Absolutely love it.
Dan.
The Great Escape, which allows me to irritate my children every year with my dad joke about, is Steve McQueen going to make it this time?
Okay, Festus?
For me, Only Fools and Horses, where Del Boy and Trotter, they finally become millionaires.
Dawn?
Can I just say I miss Neighbours, but Chitty Chitty Bang Bang has got to be. I love it.
Can't believe none of you have said Sound of Music.
I do like Sound of Music too, and actually when you watch it with adult eyes as well, you see things differently. Yeah. But Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, we love you.
And The Snowman.
Yeah, that's too much.
Too much.
I see Alan Jones virtually every day in the LBC building because he's on Classic FM.
Does he sing to you?
No, that would be weird. Thank you all very much indeed. A very loud panel tonight, I think you'll agree. Now, tomorrow's panel includes former Conservative Security Minister Baroness Pauline Neville-Jones, the Sunday Telegraph columnist Zoe Strimple, plus the founder of the Oasis Charitable Trust, which runs 53 schools across England, the Reverend Steve Chalk. Coming up in the next hour, I want to talk about diabetes, because diabetes seems to be something that people increasingly don't like admitting that they've got. I've always been quite happy to say that I'm a type 2 diabetic, despite the tirades that I get from people saying, well, you shouldn't be such a fat bastard, should you? It's your own fault because you put the food into your mouth. And they're probably quite right. But there is an opportunity to make people feel better about themselves, feel better about their bodies, and to get healthier. And we're going to talk about diabetes over the next hour. Do you feel that diabetes should be destigmatised? 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, police are using water cannon as crowds hurl missiles during further disorder in Belfast tonight. They've gathered in response to a stabbing in the city on Monday night. A Sudanese refugees appeared in court charged with attempted murder. Jim Shannon, a Democratic Unionist Party MP, told LBC the violence on the street is deplorable.
It does nothing to serve justice for the victim. What you are doing by engaging in that riotous behaviour is pure, unabated racism. It is holding entire communities responsible for the actions of one individual. And all of us in Northern Ireland need to stand united against those who are seeking to exploit the fear and anger that people rightly feel in communities.
Well, the Shadow Education Secretary Laura Trott has told LBC that children's exposure to graphic footage of Monday's attack shows why a ban on social media for under 16s is required.
The only way that we can protect children from things which they just shouldn't see. Children should not see actual violent instances in real time being played out in front of them. The only way to do that is to remove them from social media. No other way has worked.
Well, Number 10 has said it will act quickly on children's social media use, but has refused to confirm there'll be a ban. A 14-year-old girl arrested after 3 people were stabbed at a school in Manchester has been detained under the Mental Health Act. 2 teenagers and a staff member were injured in Blakely yesterday morning. Donald Trump says the US will resume strikes on Iran today after a helicopter crash.
We're going to be attacking them very hard.
You're resuming bombing?
Yeah, well, we are. Based on the helicopter, I guess we have the right to do that.
Earlier, the president said the Iranians would have to pay the price for taking too long to negotiate a peace deal. He's again urged them to sign an agreement. Both sides exchanged strikes last night after the US accused Tehran of shooting down an American military helicopter patrolling the Strait of Hormuz. The bosses of more than 80 UK high street giants say it's becoming much harder to hire young workers. The heads of Tesco, Sainsbury's and John Lewis are among those who've told the Prime Minister there's too much red tape and taxes. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 27 points at 10,254. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.16. LBC weather turning dry for a time overnight, but low cloud and rain will arrive in the west through the early hours, lows of 7 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
3 minutes past 9 is the time on LBC. Now, as many of you know, I'm a type 2 diabetic. I'm also an ambassador for Diabetes UK, so I thought I would abuse that position today by inviting people in to talk about diabetes in National Diabetes Week. Joining me in the studio are Alex McIntyre, who's Labour MP for Gloucester. He was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in January 2025 and has had some interesting things to say, which we'll come to in a minute. Alex, welcome to you. Dr. Lucy Chambers is Head of Research Impact. Oh, I've heard that one before. Head of Research, Impact and Communications at Diabetes UK, and also Douglas Twenifor, who is a specialist dietitian who's the head of clinical of the charity Diabetes UK. So I want to do two things in this hour. Our three guests are here. They can answer your questions if you've got questions about diabetes, maybe your own situation, or you're sort of thinking you might be pre-diabetic or something like that. But I also want to address the subject of stigma because, well, it's probably best for our guests to talk about that. Lucy, let's start with you on this. Why do people feel stigmatised by having diabetes?
Well, we know people feel stigmatised because we've run research surveys and we have really good evidence now that the majority of people with all types of diabetes, so type 1, type 2 and gestational diabetes, experience stigma in their day-to-day lives. So that could be from family and friends. That's a very common source of stigma. Healthcare professionals, also sadly a very common source of stigma, and wider society. So the media, we've all seen the stigmatising phrasing, photographs in the media. And of course, that's very upsetting and shaming for people to be judged in that way. But we know, and we're really concerned about it as a charity, because we know people are not engaging with healthcare because of the stigma they experience and the shame they experience. And on a wider society level, we know that diabetes is deprioritised. We know that on the policy agenda, in terms of how much funding diabetes gets for research, we don't compare to other major conditions, in terms of the prevalence of diabetes. So stigma touches on people.
So basically, Diabetes UK needs to up its game.
Yes, and that's why this week, Diabetes Week, we are running our campaign. We've been running it for several years now, Strike Out Stigma, which is all about raising the profile of stigma exists. It's also about helping people understand diabetes. So diabetes is several different conditions. They are complex. There's complex reasons why diabetes develops. There's complex ways that diabetes needs to be managed. It's very different for different people and different types of diabetes. And we are also working with healthcare professionals, providing guidance around language and how to work with people with their diabetes control. We are also funding research to understand stigma more and to work out how we can better manage it and develop interventions to stop it happening. Because diabetes, I will say I have type 1. I know that you also have a diabetes, and Alex does too. And it's a condition, we say, that requires probably the most self-management out of many conditions. It's a condition that 24 hours a day, people are thinking about their blood sugar levels, what they're eating, their activity levels, what they're doing next. It's a condition that requires a huge mental load, as well as obviously the physical demands of living with that and the potential impact of long-term complications. So stigma on top of all of that is just unfair. And if it's affecting people's health, it needs to stop.
And Douglas, there are various forms of diabetes. We haven't got time to really go into detail about, but can you just sort of outline what the type? I mean, I'm a type 2 diabetic. I think that's the most prevalent type of diabetes. Why do people get it?
So there are complex reasons why people get diabetes. And although we zero in the main types of diabetes, being type 1, type 2, and gestational diabetes, the specific reasons why a particular person gets diabetes is very distinct to them. So for example, we know that for type 1 diabetes, it's mainly genetic, but we also know that some people, around the time that they get diagnosed, they may have developed some viral infections and a lot. And for type 2 diabetes, there are a lot of reasons, including the same genetics, but also ethnicity, our age, but also things like socioeconomic background and also obesity all conspire to put people at risk of type 2 diabetes. So the key is that it's not from anything that people do themselves, but the misunderstanding and the misconception is what leads to the stigma. But through our research, we've known that this stigma not only affects the person with diabetes, but also affects some of the decisions they make around their condition, such as not going for appointments because they think that the language that will be used will be blaming, and that ultimately can affect their risk of complications associated with diabetes.
So what do you say to somebody who is accused by their friends of saying, well, if you didn't stuff your face with the 3 Mars bars every day, you wouldn't have diabetes? Because, I mean, that is essentially a statement of fact, isn't it? Shouldn't people take more responsibility for their own health?
I mean, when somebody says that, you can understand why they may come to that conclusion. And many a times, these comments are not coming from malice, because normally it comes from loved ones, family and friends. But it boils
or in
down,
my case, my listeners.
Or even at the workplace. Yeah. But these all boils down to misunderstanding of the condition. And sometimes when we misunderstand a complex condition that can be explained by science, we simplify it. And in this case, that's the simplification. So it's our role as a national diabetes organization to open up the conversation and to raise awareness of the complexity of the condition so that people will understand it.
Right, let's bring Alex McIntyre into the conversation. Alex, you're an MP. I can't think of a worse profession for a diabetic because your eating patterns are never consistent. But you were diagnosed about 18 months ago.
Yeah.
You're in your, I'm going to say, early 30s?
Early 30s, yeah.
Did you suspect you had it? What came? How did you come to be diagnosed?
Yeah, so I mean, I had a lot of the different symptoms. I was very thirsty a lot of the time. I was waking up quite a lot in the night for a wee, and I was really tired. And a lot of that I put down to being a new MP. It was a intense first 6 months as an MP, and also I was a dad to a 1-year-old at the same time. So lack of sleep kind of came with the territory. But my wife booked my GP appointment over the Christmas period. She said, Alex, you're not yourself. You need to go and see a doctor. And I'd kind of Googled my symptoms, like almost everybody does nowadays. And I saw that there was a chance that I might be type 2 diabetic. And that made sense because, lots of people, it isn't related to their weight, but I was nudging 25 stone at that point, and that's a significant risk factor. And I went to the GP and they said, no, you're too young to have type 2 diabetes. It's unlikely to be that. I said, please test me. I genuinely think this might be what I've got, so please test me. And they did. And my blood sugar was up in the 60s, and it was obviously far too high. And then I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I think, going back to that point about, is it just a case of
mine was 96 at one point.
Crikey. And that's this is the thing, and it comes a thing, doesn't it, with diabetics? What's your
You have a competition.
And
what's the highest you've ever got to, Lucy?
Well, yeah. Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Okay, all right.
But I think your comment on Mars bars is one here, and we're on the select committee at the moment. We're doing an obesity and weight management kind of and diet study, and I think it's really important that actually some of the stigma comes from the misconception that everyone with type 2 diabetes is just lazy, overweight, and it's all their fault. And actually, that's really tied in with the stigma that is around obesity anyway, which is that there's nothing to do with our environment. It's nothing to do with the fact that you walk down the high street and you see several advertisements for fast food. You see several fast food giants out on the high street, within 100 meters of our schools, or the fact that the food manufacturers, the ones that are making the Mars bars, they have massive advertising budgets. The World Cup's coming up. We'll see loads of advertising for unhealthy foods. I can't remember the last time I saw a banana advertised on the television or anywhere else. And
bananas, I don't think are very good for diabetics.
Probably not for diabetes. Well, there's a lot of
it boils down to the amount you eat, and if you spread it through the day, it's completely fine.
I think berries are meant to be quite good, aren't they? They've got less in the sugar.
I'm addicted to raspberries at the moment.
There we go.
But I was reading an article about you, And this paragraph really struck me, and I'll tell you why in a moment. It says, what scared Alex the most was the fact that several studies now show that people diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in their 30s can see their life expectancy reduced by around 14 years.
Yeah.
Now, I was diagnosed in my 40s, and I'm thinking, well, if the average life expectancy in this country is around 80 for a man, that means I've only got 4 years left.
It's terrifying. And, I said I had a 1-year-old son, and I was working through, as lots of people do when you first get that diagnosis, and you work through the numbers and you go, that might mean I might not make his wedding. Am I really going to sit here and not do anything about it? And it was quite a challenging time for me. It was quite confronting. As I said, mine is related to my weight. I've struggled with my weight my entire adult life. I've been up and down. I've done every diet. I've done Joe Wicks. I've done Slimming World. I've done, they're all available, just so I don't get called out for raising any. And, it's been up and down, and it's a real struggle for me, and it will be a struggle for most of my life. I've not tried the jabs. That's one thing I've not done. I've tried to do it.
Well, let me tell you, I can wax lyrical about that, but I won't at the moment. But having Manjaro has transformed my blood sugar control. Yeah. It really has.
Yeah. And a lot of colleagues, a lot of people I speak to who have used the jabs. I've got family members, I won't name them on the radio, they won't thank me for that, who are on the jabs. And they find it works for them. For me, I want to work on my relationship with food, because I want to show my son what a good and healthy relationship with food can look like. It is challenging in this job. As you said, we're away from home a lot. We eat at odd times of day, and that is a challenge. But we have to try.
Do you feel that there is a stigma about it for you?
Of course there is, and it's really interesting. I lost 7.5 stone last year. I've regained about 2 stone of that back since I finished the shakes. I was treated differently as an MP that weighed 17.5 stone as to an MP that weighed 25 stone. The way people treat you in this country is different. We have
that's a weight thing, not a diabetes
thing. It's a diabetes thing, but I think it's really closely linked in that, that the misconceptions around type 2 diabetes is that, as I said, everybody, you get it because you're overweight. Now, in my case, that was probably the factor that tipped me over the edge. But for a lot of people, if you're from an ethnic minority community that's more at risk of getting it, it's very often that your BMI will be in a healthy range, and you can still be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. It's got nothing to do with your weight. And interestingly, all the science shows that actually everyone has a number, and that's your personal number over which, and actually that's why the weight loss works for people who even are slightly, have got more healthy.
So when you said you had a reading of 60, was that BMI or HbA1c?
That was my HbA1c.
Right, fine.
My BMI is about 40. Yeah, I think my BMI has never got quite up to 60. It was about in the 40s, I think. And and I'm still working on it, and it's never.
You said you put 2.5 stone back on.
I have, yes, yeah.
Now, how do you deal with that psychologically? Because people who've never had a weight problem will say, well, just pull yourself together, just sort of like eat the right foods again. It's never that simple, is it?
And it's not. And I have good days and I have bad days, like lots of people. I grew up in a normal working class family in Yorkshire. When we were happy, we ate. When we were sad, we ate. When we were celebrating, we ate. When we were commiserating, we ate. And that's like lots of families across the country. And it wasn't kind of big bowls of salad. It was, good hearty Yorkshire puddings. And my dad was a great cook. And that's the it is a challenge. But I've got to, and I said, I want to role model for my son what a healthier relationship with food can look like. So that and it's a massive challenge we have on a national scale. But I think going back to the diabetes point, the reason why I came forward is I had 2 choices last year when I got diagnosed. Either I wallowed in self-pity in my office, or actually I used my story to showcase that there's so many young people who are now being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and they shouldn't feel ashamed of that. They should come forward for treatment. And actually, we should have a national conversation about it, because we're spending over £10 billion a year on diabetes treatment on the NHS. If you include obesity-related illnesses more broadly, it's even higher. We can do something about it, and we should do something about it. And I'm really passionate about that.
Well, we aren't called Leading Britain's Conversation for nothing, so we will have that conversation over the next 40 minutes or so. We want you to take part in that. If you are a diabetic, type 1, type 2, whatever, and you feel that you are stigmatized by maybe your work colleagues, your friends, possibly even your family, give us a call and tell me what your experience. But we'll take questions on any aspect of diabetes. We've got 3 experts in the studio here. I was going to say 4, but that would be too self-aggrandizing, wouldn't it? It's 90 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And come on in to Classic FM Calm, LBC's soothing sister station. Find peace in the music with Classic FM Calm. Listen on Global Player or ask your smart speaker to play Classic FM Calm.
3 heroes, 1 mission. Die.
Jamaica, and one day I went to see my friend's mother who was ill, and when I saw her, she said to me that the sugar get me, and I couldn't understand what she meant, the sugar get me. And after a few months, she passed away, and at the funeral, I found out that the sugar get me meant she had diabetes. So in the Caribbean, the terminology diabetes is like a death sentence. It is. So when you hear people from the Caribbean say, "Oh, the sugar get me," that means they got diabetes, but they don't want to say diabetes because they're afraid of that word they are. So also myself, I was diagnosed type 2 diabetes. My HbA1c was 92. My blood glucose was 15.9, and I reversed it in 105 days.
Wow. Well, that is I would say that's almost impossible. I mean, that is amazing.
Well, it's not impossible because I've done it.
No, I wasn't questioning you about whether, but I mean that is some achievement.
Yeah, it's all right. I think my advantage was I didn't know what diabetes was when I was diagnosed. When my doctor told me that I'm diabetic, I asked, how did I become diabetic? And my doctor just said to me, through your lifestyle. Because I've been a professional chef for over 30 years. And I'm thinking to myself, how did I become diabetic? But when chefs like myself become diabetic, I analysed it to the fact that we have to taste like sauces about 10 times if it's got alcohol and it's got carbohydrates in it. And these are the things that we look at for our lifestyle. And as a busy chef, you're always eating junk food a lot of the time during the day. So I had to reverse my intake of foods, what kept me diabetic. So I had to go on a program of my mindset. What do I need to do? So I had to do physical activity because I lost about 5 stone. I did. I was overweight. And there's another terminology that the Caribbean used, but my mum used me. She looked at me and said, "Lyndon, look at your belly. Your belly looks fat." And I said to my mum, "You can't talk to me like that." So when my mum says, "Your belly looks fat," that means you're overweight, you're big. So when I got home, I looked at myself and I thought, "Wow, Lyndon, you are fat."
Self-knowledge is a wonderful thing, isn't it, Lyndon? I mean, let's put that to Douglas, because, I mean, is it... You said earlier in the programme that there are certain different ethnic groups who are more likely to get diabetes. I mean, just explain why that is.
So we know that people from African, Caribbean background and also people from South Asian background are up to 2 to 4 times more likely to get type 2 diabetes compared to people from white European background. And although we don't understand everything, Genetics has to play with it. Unfortunately, how people from these backgrounds store fat is different to how people from white backgrounds store fat. So if you take somebody from...
Lyndon stores it in his belly, obviously.
A white background, and you compare that with somebody from South Asian background or African Caribbean background, and they weigh the same, but you do the analysis, you see that the person from African or Black Caribbean background will have more fat compared to the person from white background. But also, where they store the fat, the person from those ethnic backgrounds tend to store more fat around their pancreas, around their liver, and that means that their insulin doesn't work as effectively as supposed to or do, and that puts them...
So I think that goes totally against the stereotype, because I mean, this doesn't come across in a bad way, but I always think that black people and Asian people generally look far fitter than white people do. You see more fat white people than you do black people or Asians.
So if you do a visual representation, but if you put them on a scale, right, and they are weighing...
So appearances can be deceptive, that's
absolutely.
What you're saying.
You look at the percentage of their weight that is fat. Unfortunately, there's discrepancy between the two, and that is what put them at risk of.
Okay, thank you, Lyndon. Sasha says, wow, I'm a 17-year-old type 1 diabetic, and this is so special. Well, that sort of almost shows that the point of doing this discussion is actually quite important for people with diabetes. Sasha, give us a call. I'd like to hear your story, but first let's go to Andy in Croydon. Andy, hello.
Hello.
What would you like to say?
I'll just stay with a little fact. Back in January, I had a heart attack, and my HbA1c was 88. Just recently I had a test. It's now 56. I've given up work. I don't work shifts anymore. I'm eating better. I'm exercising more. I've lost quite a lot of weight, and I've never felt better. Now, I've had diabetes for over 5 years, and I noticed at the time that I got diabetes after a long period of shift work, and then we went into lockdown. It was the first lockdown, and I stopped doing shift work, and I was working from home. And I was diagnosed with diabetes. I was told my HbA1c was 52, and then within a matter of weeks it had gone down to 48, and that's because I wasn't doing shift work and I was taking the medication regularly. I think that's the important thing: is you've got to have a regular life, you've got to have regular meals, and you've got to have a regular intake of your medication. And working shifts and not getting proper meal breaks and all the stuff that went with it just played absolute havoc with that, and resulted in me having a heart attack eventually. And I've lost such a lot of weight. I mean, we're talking about the belly fat. I've lost a lot of belly fat because that's the, what do they call it? The cortisol fat, the stress fat. That's gone. You know, and I've lost quite a lot of weight. But when we talk about the stigma, that's what is the main subject here, isn't it? It's the stigma.
Yeah.
I've felt that the NHS sort of look at me as if say this is self-inflicted. You know, I mean, the last time I went to a GP, well, no, not the last time, but the last but one, he was saying, we'll have to put you on insulin injections. You'll have to start injecting insulin. I thought, I really don't want to do that. I really want to give the medication a chance. I'd taken an oral form of Monjaro. I forget the name of it now, but it was an oral form, and it worked great for 6 weeks. I lost loads of weight, and then it completely bound me up. My entire digestive system just stopped working, so I had to stop taking it.
It does affect people in different ways, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. But it was. I then went on to dapagliflozin. Now that's been great for me. I mean, that's a drug that's been around for over 10 years, but that basically puts the glucose in your blood out through your kidneys and out in urine. It makes you go to the toilet a lot more, but you get rid of all the glucose in your blood very effectively, and eventually you get used to it and you stop going to the toilet so much. But it works just as well, and I've been on that for a long time now, and that certainly works. But yeah, I think there is. It's type 2. It's self-inflicted. It's not real diabetes. You know, just eat less, move about a lot more. But
I have to say, I've never experienced any sort of NHS people making me feel guilty for having it. In fact, quite the opposite. I would hope that's a very sort of unusual experience that Andy's had.
Unfortunately, it's not. Sometimes it comes across as the language that's used in healthcare. When you're telling or you're assuming that a person who walks through your door, their blood glucose levels are high because of what they are eating. That's not backed by science. But when you do that, you leave with them some sense of guilt. And that's exactly what Andy was alluding to, because we know that your blood glucose levels can be affected by a number of things.
But you're effectively giving people a free pass.
Absolutely not.
Because, I mean, I know why I've got diabetes. It's because I have a very sweet tooth. I love drinking fizzy drinks. I love sweet things. I like cakes. I like biscuits. I don't like all the foods that I should eat. And that's why I got it. Now, I'm trying to do my best to sort of change all of that and have been trying for many, many years. And I have the odd period where I do well and I have the odd period where I don't. But I don't deny that it's at least in part my fault.
Can I challenge you
Go on.
slightly there? I'm not denying body weight and diet don't play a role, but 2/3 of the adult population in this country are living with overweight and obesity. 7% of the population have diabetes. What makes you different from someone else who's carrying some excess weight? And that's down to your unique biology. So you probably have a genetic predisposition, and which has interacted with the way that you eat, that has meant that you have developed type 2 diabetes. And there's probably a whole host of other risk factors in there as well. Age, for one. Andy there talked about working night shifts. There's really good evidence now that people who work night shifts have a really high increased risk of type 2, and that's because it affects your...
When I signed a new contract to carry on doing this evening job, I remember saying to my boss, I don't think I can do this for much longer because I'm getting home at 11:30. The worst thing you can do then is have a meal because it stays in your stomach. And I said, I think this might be the last time. But I have to say, Manjaro has actually completely, I mean, I wouldn't have normally said that on air, but Manjaro has completely changed that. And there are all sorts of different ways of managing it. If you can, well, not just through medication, but... just lifestyle as well, and exercise, because I mean I now go to the gym at least once a week, so I mean that really helps as well.
I think part of the the misconceptions we need to deal with is that you talk to most people and they say type 2 is about sugar diet, and that is the dominant narrative out there. Science has moved on. That was how we were talking about type 2 diabetes 30 years ago. We know a huge amount more about type 2 now. We now know that it is a complex condition with multiple risk factors. There's a strong genetic element. Age plays a role. Ethnicity plays a role. Where, as Dougie was explaining, where people have store fat in their body, do they store it safely under the skin, or do they store it around their pancreas and around their liver, which are key organs for managing blood sugars? And that's genetically determined as well, and that will just predispose. So I think helping people understand there's no single cause of type 2 is a really important shift we need to make in the kind of public narrative.
Right, we've got lots of calls coming in, lots of texts and WhatsApp messages as well. We'll get through as many as we can before 10 o'clock. You're listening to LBC, it's 9:33. News headlines with Daryl Jackson.
Police are using water cannon as crowds hurl missiles during further disorder in Belfast. They've gathered in response to a stabbing in the city on Monday night. A Sudanese refugees appeared in court, charged with attempted murder. Donald Trump's again threatened to bomb Iran if no peace deal is signed. The US president has accused the Iranians of stalling. Tehran says it is reassessing the situation. And 2 men have become the first to be jailed under a specific offence of bringing migrants to the UK in small boats. The Afghan and Sudanese nationals have been sentenced to a combined total of over 4 years. LBC weather turning dry for a time overnight, but low cloud and rain will arrive in the west through the early hours, lows of 7 degrees.
This is LBC.
Tackles that crunch and theatrical diving, rivals on terraces sobbing and crying, last minute winners that change everything. These are a few of our favourite things. When you're singing yet not winning, when your bet's gone bad, we simply remember our favourite things and then we'll feel so glad.
For all your
your favourite things, visit BetVictor. 18+GambleAware.org. Please gamble responsibly.
Get iPhone 17 in the Vodafone Business Summer Sale. iPhone 17 is built for business with all-day battery life and the powerful A19 chip for fast, efficient performance. Experience it all on the best network for business and save £300. Hurry, offer ends the 22nd of July. Vodafone Business.
Businesses with up to 9 employees only. Based on iPhone 17 and 24-month unlimited airtime plan. Best network is awarded at the Mobile Industry Awards. Saving calculated over 36 months.
So let me get this straight. You pack the sleeping bags?
Yes.
Mosquito repellent?
Yes.
And flipping badminton rackets?
Obviously.
But somehow, the tent is still at home.
Well, technically the garage. Look, on the ring cameras, you can see it there.
Oh.
And there. Hey, where are you going?
To a hotel, Neil. Come on, kids. Yay! Always know what's happening at home with Ring. Available now at ring.com and selected retailers.
Iain Dale on LBC.
9:35. We're talking about diabetes. It's National Diabetes Week. We have two representatives from Diabetes UK, Dr. Lucy Chambers and Douglas Twinafor. And we also have Alex McIntyre, who's Labour MP for Gloucester, with us, who was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes last year. Now, we have a text here from Dave who says, Iain, have you or any of your guests ever done the complete meal replacement programme by the NHS? I'm just about to start this next week and was wondering if you have any tips because it sounds tough. That's from Dave in Bidford on Avon. Well, your luck is in, Dave, because Alex did it.
I did last year. Actually, Diabetes Week last year coincided with my last week on the shakes. I lost an awful lot of weight, and actually I put my type 2 into reverse. And it is a tough program, Dave. It's not, it's not going to be an easy 12 weeks or 16 weeks by the time you get off the kind of the reintroduction of food, but it's well worth doing. I guess my tips are, I wasn't a big fan of the soups, I must admit. I stuck to the shakes. Make sure you're well prepared. Make sure that you are planning ahead for your day, because the last thing you need when you're only having 900 calories a day is to be caught outside somewhere where you can't get access to it. But actually, they're quite easy to make, because all you need is some water and to be able to shake in your powder. What I would say is make sure you're drinking lots of water. It's really important to make sure you're keeping up your hydration throughout the day. You are allowed to have things like black coffee. I was living on black coffee while I was doing it, because I can't live without my caffeine, but I wasn't having milk in my tea and I can't drink black tea. Make sure you have the fibre supplement that they give you, because it does do odd things to your constitution, and it is important that you keep up your fibre intake. And be kind to yourself. I found it was I had low energy a lot of time. It's quite difficult being in Parliament and being on 900 calories a day, but I did it. I got through it, and I came out the other end much happier, much healthier. And it's well worth sticking to it.
So it literally is just soups and shakes for the whole time.
So for 12 weeks, you have a choice. They send you a menu. I really liked the chocolate shakes. I wasn't, I'm quite happy eating similar things on a regular basis. So I that was fine. You get 4 a day. The shakes are around 225 calories each, so you have about 900 calories a day. But as I said, you can mix it in. So people would mix it in with, the vanilla one. They would mix in with cold coffee and ice to make like a vanilla iced latte. If that's what you go to. It wasn't for me, but I was very happy just going through the shakes. It's tough. Look, did I miss having a bacon sandwich? Of course I did. But this goes back to the point. I was terrified about missing my son's wedding, and having that thing in your mind that is why you're doing this.
And your son's 1 year old.
My son's 1 year old, and I'm thinking I might not make his wedding day. And I was thinking, do you know what? It is worth it for 12 weeks. You can do anything for 12 weeks, quite honestly. You can grind it out. There will be tough days, but be kind to yourself. Bring your friends and family on board. My wife was amazing during that. She really stepped up and helped me out a lot. And that's those are my best tips, Dave, and best of luck with it.
If only they'd create a diet where you could have like 4 mint magnums every day. That would be my dream.
Just to add to Alex's advice, which are completely perfect for Dave. One of the things that people find helpful is that once you're on the meal replacement diet, you don't increase your exercise, because that can make it difficult. But also have direct contact with the team that you're working with, so that if anything goes wrong, you can be on the phone or email them.
And they do. They check in on a weekly basis, and there's an app, and you can let them know if there's any challenges you're facing. Really good advice. Don't try and do everything at once. The exercise gets built in later on, and after 12 weeks, they start to reintroduce food. There are some brilliant books out there. I really enjoyed the 800 calorie diet cookbook. There's some really good recipes in that are they are really great for people living with diabetes, and so I think it is a challenge, but it's well worth it.
Right, let's go to another caller. Suki is in Birmingham. Hello, Suki.
Hi, Ian. Hi, thanks for having me on.
What would you like to ask?
Yeah, well, it's not so much I wanted to ask anything. I just wanted to make a comment, and I think, if I'm honest, I am a doctor. I work in hospital medicine as a cardiac anaesthetist, so I anaesthetize patients undergoing heart surgery. Many of the patients that we look after are diabetic. They've got severe heart disease, and so diabetes, as we all know, is a very serious condition. It does increase your risk of heart disease. It significantly increases your risk of dementia, blindness, kidney failure, etc. And so it's a condition that we need to deal with very seriously. It's on the increase. Too many people have it. But I think some of your members of the panel are sort of letting down your listeners, because they seem to be saying that it's a very complex situation, which in some ways it's complex. Those people who get diabetes, sure, there are ethnic factors. I mean, I have a family history of diabetes. We're from northern Punjab in India, and my father's diabetic, my grandparents were diabetic, my grandparents died of heart disease and strokes because of their diabetes. And I'm at risk of diabetes. I don't have it. I'm 58. I don't have it. And the reason, although I'm at risk of it, and the reason why I've not had it, unlike my brother who does have it, is because I make sure that I do all the right things in terms of looking after myself. It's taking personal responsibility for what you should be doing. You have to have a very healthy diet. You have to avoid, if you're at risk of it, you have to avoid refined carbohydrates. Diabetes is a condition where you have too much blood sugar in the bloodstream. Don't eat the foods that get converted to sugar. In other words, don't eat sugar, don't eat refined carbohydrates, don't eat pasta and spaghetti and chocolates and biscuits and cakes. If you do, the consequences are clear. You're going to become sick. The other thing that you've got to do is you've got to exercise on a regular basis. You've got to exercise on most days. And if you don't do those things, you become sick. So people have to take personal responsibility. Yeah, and it's all very well blaming your...
I can sense Lucy bristling at that.
No. Hi, Suki. Thanks for coming on and giving your point of view. And I completely agree. You know, I talked about the complexity of type 2 diabetes, and I will talk about the complexity of why it develops and why people are at risk. And it's, you know, there's very strong scientific evidence for the many risk factors, including body weight, that predispose people to type 2 diabetes. But that's not to say, I'm saying the way to prevent type 2 is very complex, or the way to help people manage it is extremely complex. I'm talking about the difference between the drivers of type 2, which is different to what people can do in their lives to make choices. But I think an important point here is that we're not talking about a level playing field. Choice for some people is difficult. There was a report published today showing that for some people living in the most deprived communities, it would take 85% of their disposable income to eat a government healthy diet. So for some people, eating healthy food is out of their reach. It's not affordable. For some people who are working jobs, night shifts, going to the gym, being physically active every day is out of reach. So
I think we should also, I can perhaps be a bit more forceful in my pushback at being the politician on the panel. I like to think of myself as a reasonably intelligent person. I've read all the diet literature. I've gone on all these diets. I know that eating less and exercising more would be better for me. Has that worked? Has that worked for the whole population? We've said this for years. Personal responsibility. Do this and you'll be fine. And yet we are living in a society where 2/3 of the population are living with overweight or obesity. I think we have to move beyond this idea that just telling people, oi, fatty, get on the treadmill is going to actually fix this problem. We need to address it. And Lucy said, perfectly well. I was at the launch today for the Food Foundation's Broken Plate report. There are structural challenges in our society that make it more difficult for people. But this idea that there's an information gap, we know full well on what we need to do. That doesn't make it any easier to do it when the decision is made.
But you and I are both in jobs that we know affect our health adversely because of what we do, the hours that we keep, the fact that it means we don't have sort of regular meal times.
But we're also very privileged in that we're paid more than lots of people. They can't afford the healthy food in the supermarket.
Indeed.
So there's swings and roundabouts on that.
But, you were diagnosed after you became an MP.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you a personal question now, which you don't need to answer.
Yeah, of course.
Have you had a conversation with your wife about whether you want to stand again?
I have, yeah. We've agreed I will. So it's a really important question. When I came into politics, I said to my wife, every election we all sit down as a family and discuss what's the right thing for us as a family. One of the reasons why I came into politics at a relatively young age, I was a solicitor in the city. I had a career there that I could have continued quite happily. Was because actually there was a lack of people from working class backgrounds who'd gone on to successful careers, had young families in Parliament. My city was represented, and Richard, my predecessor, was a very nice man, but he was a 60-odd-year-old Etonian. It was a very different.
Can I break it to you that as a solicitor in the City of London, you're no longer
working class? Oh, I accept that. But actually, what we really need to, and I'm going back to my old school soon, is to say that actually once there are opportunities for young people. For my dad was a train conductor growing up. My mum worked worked her way up and did her AAT through night school. My parents never went to university. There's an opportunity. It's for young people like me who didn't have those opportunities. Their parents have those opportunities to show that they can.
Right. We will take more of your questions and calls in a moment. It's 9:47.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
After the racist pogrom that unfolded on the streets of Belfast last night, how have we ended up here? Plus, whether UN has today voiced concerns about the US World Cup.
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
At Waitrose, you're a food lover when 3 for £12 on
World Cup.
Yes.
Aye. It was just one of those things that has never been in the family before, and my sister, who's 91, she hasn't got it, and my late brother, he hadn't. So I don't know where it came from, but
what's been the biggest challenge for you?
probably, I don't know what my biggest challenge. Probably trying to keep my. Toby, the diabetic nurse at the surgery, he's always kicking me, but trying to, because I sometimes do go up a bit, but I don't really have a challenge. I live just a normal life. I'm still working. I'm working right now. I do Domino Pizza's deliveries, and I do.
Do you?
6 nights a week.
At 82?
Aye.
Wow.
I'm a Scotsman.
Good for you, David.
And I tell you, another thing I do, I've also involved in the souvenir business, and I spent 4 or 5 hours in London today.
Well, there's
customers.
plenty of souvenir shops in London nowadays, aren't there?
Oh, there's too many.
Yeah.
But I go to Windsor and Cambridge.
Okay. Well, listen, it's great to hear about your experience. And if I need a Domino's pizza in Rickmansworth, I know where to come. Graham says, being labelled a diabetic feels reductive, as if my identity is defined solely by a chronic condition. I bristle whenever I hear the word, often from healthcare workers and pharmacy staff. I'm more than a diagnosis. While diabetes is part of my journey, it doesn't define who I am. I wish to leave the term diabetic in the dustbin. There isn't an alternative one, is there, though?
We actually want to refer to people not by the condition, but by them as a person. So we say people with diabetes. However, we know that some people with diabetes prefer the term diabetic. So if people are referring to themselves as diabetic, we will usually not challenge it because we don't want to define how.
See, I've never seen it as a shameful thing, and yet that seems to be what the texter there was saying.
If you flip it, we don't say the same thing about other conditions. So we won't say somebody is cancerous. We will say the person has cancer. Or living with cancer. And we want to refer to people not by their condition, but as a person who has.
It's a bit woke, isn't it?
I'm afraid I will have to challenge that, because even the word woke, this narrative preceded the word woke. So it couldn't have been woke. And I'm not even sure what woke means.
All right. Let's go to Ahmed in Wembley. Ahmed, hi.
Hi, Ian. Good evening. So I'm a father of a 12-year-old diabetic son. He's been diabetic since the age of 4. Since he started going to secondary school, I've realized that he doesn't take insulin. He's on an insulin pump. And when I asked him a few times, and then at the end he said to me he doesn't want his colleagues to know that he's diabetic. And he wants that to eat and play with them as normal. He doesn't want to feel special. The other thing is he decided not to go for swimming classes anymore, obviously, because he doesn't want anyone to see the insulin pump on him. I do my best to explain to him that this is normal and diabetes is okay, but he keeps insisting on, I want to live like a normal kid and have fun with the rest of my classmates. I think schools are not doing enough to educate other students on this matter, to be honest. Otherwise, they wouldn't hide it.
It's quite difficult, though, if he has that view, to say to him, Lucy, maybe you wouldn't want to come in here, to say to him, no, you've got to embrace it. Be proud of it. This is nothing to be ashamed of. People initially will be interested in what it does and why you have it, but after a while, they would just see it as perfectly normal. Lucy, what advice might you give him?
I think here what's really important, especially for children who are entering their teenage years and body conscious, is role modelling, seeing celebrities, other children, people in the public domain proudly wearing their diabetes tech. Diabetes tech's everywhere now. I mean, diabetes tech in and of itself is an amazing thing for people with diabetes and really helps with blood sugar management. But also it identifies people, and you see other people and you understand there's all different people, different ages and different shapes and sizes who are living with this condition, and there's lots of them. So I think tech's done something to really kind of bring that to surface that. And for children, I think having that visibility is really important. I was going to mention the Barbie that had a insulin pump, but I'm not sure your son,
That's not going to work, really.
Yeah,
it needs to be a Ken.
Yes.
And does he have the Freestyle Libre blood glucose measuring?
Yes, the Dexcom G7, which is an amazing technology, to be honest. I'm trying to be honest, and this is all started since he started going to secondary school. I've explained to him that it's okay to have it. It's fine. He'd been given a pass to use the lift inside the school instead of using the stairs like the other children, but he doesn't want to use it. He still feels like, I want to be normal like everyone else because it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Can I also add that
Sorry.
At Diabetes UK we have a programme running called Together Type 1, which is for young people with type 1 diabetes. They can meet people with the condition, they can do activities with them, and it normalises having type 1. So please, Ahmed, go onto the Diabetes UK website and look up Together Type 1. It may be of interest.
And I'm sure there'll be groups near you in London. Ahmed, thank you very much indeed for your call. We haven't got much time left, but we're going to go to Jez in Stockton-on-Tees. Hello, Jez.
Hi there.
Hello. So all male callers on this evening. I'm sure there are female. Well, we've got a female diabetic with us. Jez, what would you like to say?
I was diagnosed in 2021, and you want to know about stigma. You get a lot of appointments when you're first diagnosed, and I put them all into the HR system, and HR actually pulled me up about having too many medical appointments. Also, when I went to the specialist at the hospital, she turned around and said I needed to start taking personal responsibility for this. I was on a low-carb, low-sugar diet before being diagnosed. So I was a bit of a loss as to why I actually got diabetes.
I mean, that seems to go completely against what you two have been saying about when someone says, well, pull your socks up, take personal responsibility. You think that's a counterproductive approach.
Absolutely. And we do hear, unfortunately, stories about discrimination at workplace. But diabetes is covered under the Disability Act. So employers are, by law, bound to give reasonable adjustment to people with diabetes. So I will encourage, I didn't pick the name, but I'll encourage us to give our helpline a call, and they'll be able to talk through them what the responsibilities of their work.
Jez, thank you for your call, and thank you to the three of you for coming into the studio. I feel we should do this again, because although an hour seems a long time, it's never quite long enough, is it? And apologies to everyone that we couldn't get to on the phones. Well, thanks for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'm back tomorrow from 7. If you missed any of this evening's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. We've got a new Iain Dale All Talk podcast out now. It's with Francis Foster from the Trigonometry podcast. He's got a new book out on what it's like being a teacher. It's called Uneducated and Why You Should Never Be a Teacher. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Richard Spur. But right now, Ben Kentish.
Thank you very much indeed, Ian. Hello there. A very, very good evening indeed to you this Wednesday night. Ben Kentish here with you on LBC. Coming up,
engaging in that riotous behaviour is pure, unabated racism. All of us in Northern Ireland need to stand united.
Another night of violence unfolds in Belfast this evening, hours after mobs marauding through the streets of that city set fire to homes and cars owned by people who weren't white. And it is, isn't it, another outbreak of racist rioting in this country, something we seem to be becoming more and more accustomed to. And yet this isn't the sort of thing, is it, that we should just be shrugging our shoulders and accepting. This is something that we thought we'd left behind in the 1980s. So why is it back? How have we got here? What's changed? And who's to blame?